Tyrion Lannister stood upon the ramparts of the Red Keep, peering over the battlements at the sullen waters of Blackwater Bay. In the distance, well beyond the great chain that had been forged in secret to trap and burn Stannis Baratheon's fleet, ships bobbed like black shadows in the twilight. The wind whipped Tyrion's hair back from his broad forehead, reminding him that though he might stand upon a fortress of stone, all fortresses could fall. And if Stannis might reach King's Landing unchecked, that dark-haired pretender would stride in beneath the Iron Throne and claim what Cersei's children believed was theirs by right. But tonight, Tyrion was not thinking of Wildfire, and not about how to outmaneuver his sister's cruelty or even how to outwit his father's ambitions. His mind lingered on a letter, a scroll placed in his hand by Varys earlier that evening. A letter from Dragonstone, bearing the seal of Stannis Baratheon. He unrolled it there in the dying light. The raven's ink scrawled a message unmistakably direct, its words terse and unvarnished, a peace talk. Or at the very least, Stannis' willingness to entertain one. Tyrion weighed that offer against all that he knew. Stannis was not a man prone to compromise. He was rigid and unrelenting, consumed with the belief that the Iron Throne was his by rightful inheritance after his younger brother Renly's sudden demise. Indeed, from every rumor swirling around King's Landing, from every subtle hint Varys offered, Tyrion understood that the sword of the Baratheon claim hung precariously over the city. But if there was truly an opening, if a conversation might be had, then Tyrion knew it was his duty, or perhaps his one chance, to preserve not only his own life, but also that of all who huddled within these city walls. He allowed himself a small, grim smile. To talk with Stannis Baratheon might be madness, but madness had gotten him this far, had it not? The next morning he rose earlier than usual, ignoring the throbbing headache that followed too many cups of wine the night before. He dressed carefully, choosing a dark doublet embroidered with faint traces of gold, subdued enough to remind the lords of the court that though he was a Lannister, he was here to speak peace, not taunt them with the riches of his house. His scarred face, courtesy of his time in battle against the hill tribes, already stood out starkly, so he left his hair wild. In the corridor outside his chambers, Bronn waited with that perpetual smirk etched into his lean face. Together they moved through the labyrinth of halls until they reached the small council chamber. None of them, Tyrion thought, would be pleased by the news he had to share. Cersei, especially, would greet the notion of negotiation as an act of weakness. She would protest. Joffrey, Seven save him, would stamp and holler and threaten all sorts of punishments for traitors to his cause. But Tyrion had a suspicion that if he could convince the men who truly pulled the strings, or at least had influence, perhaps the city might be saved from a bloody onslaught. The day was bright, sunlight slanting through the narrow windows as they assembled. Cersei sat in her seat, drumming her fingernails upon the polished table. Varys hovered near the shadows, his hands folded in front of him, face betraying nothing. Lord Baelish was absent, off tending to some personal scheme or counting coins no doubt, while Grand Maester Pycelle mumbled quietly about the city's food stores. Joffrey, in attendance for once, slouched in a high-backed chair, face twisted in perpetual disdain. Tyrion cleared his throat, letting his gaze linger on each of them in turn. "I've called this meeting," he said, "because I've received word that might avert a cataclysm at our gates. It comes from Dragonstone." He set the scroll down on the table. The wax seal, a stag within a flaming heart, was broken. "It would appear Stannis Baratheon has proposed we speak. A temporary negotiation. In other words, the man wants to see if there's a path that spares bloodshed." His eyes darted to Joffrey's face. "Spare us all from bloodshed." Joffrey's mouth curled. "I don't see why we should lower ourselves to parley with traitors," he spat. "Stannis lost all claim the moment he took up arms against me. I am the king, and I will have his head." Tyrion interrupted him with the slightest bow of his head, though it was also an attempt to cut short the boy's hysteria. "Your Grace, I beg your indulgence. Parleying doesn't mean we forfeit your rightful place. But if we can secure terms that keep the city intact, if we can avoid the loss of thousands of lives, do we not have a duty to consider it?" He turned to Cersei. "Sister, you must see the logic here. We are not all Tywin Lannister, nor do we have unlimited resources." Cersei's green eyes narrowed. "Logic? I fail to see the logic in letting the wolf, no, the stag, into our midst. You think you can trust Stannis? The man scorns falsehood in others, but I doubt that extends to leniency for our house. He's a wounded animal, Tyrion, cornered by our father's influence at Harrenhal and our gold from Casterly Rock. And cornered animals are the most dangerous. Now, Tyrion inclined his head. Dangerous indeed. Yet if the cornered beast extends a paw, might we not see if we can muzzle him, if only to save our own hides? Joffrey slammed a fist on the table, rattling the decanter of wine. I don't like this, he snarled. I am the king, and you will not undermine my authority. Tyrion reined in his exasperation with practiced ease. There was a time he might have barked something scathing, but he had learned caution. Your Grace, he said, forcing politeness, the decision is of course yours. I only beg that you allow me to handle the matter, since the letter was addressed to me, so we might discover if Stannis' overture is genuine or not. If it is a trap, I shall walk into it before you must, and you will have lost nothing. The boy glowered. Very well. If he tries any trickery, I'll give you to Sir Meryn. It was an empty threat, but it echoed across the chamber. Tyrion felt the prickle of approaching dread, yet he also felt the stirring of possibility. Once the meeting concluded, Tyrion was the first to leave the room, wishing to avoid a tangle of words with his sister. Bronn followed in his wake with that cat-like grace. The two men descended down winding corridors lined with torches that sputtered in the gloom. At length, Tyrion found himself in his solar door barred behind them. There, he allowed a heavy exhalation. Well, he said, that went about as well as could be expected. Cersei mistrusts me, Joffrey hates me, and I suspect that Varys is the only one who might see any logic in this. Nay. Bronn shrugged. We'll see if it pays off. Would save my lads some trouble if we aren't forced to kill our way through Stannis men. Less gold for them, though. Tyrion scowled lightly. You think of nothing but gold, you sellsword. But let's be honest, gold is the only reason you follow me. Perhaps if the realm finds a measure of peace, I'll find ways to keep your purse heavy. Bronn's grin was roguish. That's all I ask, my lord. Late that night, Tyrion pored over paper and ink, drafting his reply to Stannis. He kept his words measured, polite yet laced with the cunning necessary to show that he was not gullible. He appealed to Stannis' sense of justice. He recognized the older Baratheon's penchant for righteousness. While Tyrion himself did not put stock in men's claims to moral high ground, he knew how to manipulate them. He let the lines reflect a willingness to treat, to weigh the claims to the throne, to speak of a settlement that might save the city from ruin. What he did not say, but implied between the lines, was that if Stannis truly believed in saving the innocents, then he must come in good faith. He sealed the letter and entrusted it to Varys that evening. The spider examined the sigil on the wax with faint amusement. You are a bold man, my lord, Varys purred. But that is what I admire in you. Let us hope your boldness does not become your demise. Tyrion let out a humorless chuckle. I am quite attached to living, Varys. I intend to remain that way. Now off with you, or with your little birds, or however you plan to see this delivered. The sooner Stannis receives it, the sooner we shall know if he truly intends to parley. Nance. He slept fitfully, dreams plagued by visions of wildfire explosions, green flames licking at the hulls of ships, the screams of men drowned out by the thunder of crashing timbers. In his dreams, the sea was red. When he woke, half sweating in the pre-dawn gloom, he tried to tell himself it was only a nightmare. Yet he knew that if Stannis did not respond, or if the reply was an outright rejection, such nightmarish scenes might soon become reality. Days passed, and each morning Tyrion found himself scanning the horizon for a shape against the sky, for ravens that came and went in the rookery. Each evening he endured the tensions of a city bracing for siege. The gold cloaks took to patrolling the streets in pairs, and small folk muttered about fleeing to the countryside. But the countryside was no safer. With war raging in the Riverlands, with Robb Stark's armies, with Tywin's forces scattered, there was nowhere safe. It was on a morning as gray as lead that a raven finally arrived. Tyrion was summoned from bed by a frantic messenger who all but hammered on his chamber door. Blearily, Tyrion pulled on a robe and followed the man to the small council chamber, where Cersei stood with arms folded tightly across her chest. Joffrey paced like a caged animal, eyes shining with some mixture of worry and venom. Varys was there too, calm as ever, the letter clutched in his soft hands. "It is addressed to you, Lord Tyrion," the spider said, offering it across. A swift reply. Tyrion tore open the wax seal. He read each line with mounting surprise. Stannis had responded with a harsh tone, no surprise, but he had not dismissed the request. He demanded that Tyrion journey to a neutral ground outside the city walls to speak with his envoys. The ultimate demand was clear: Joffrey's abdication and Cersei's imprisonment. But couched in the details was a willingness to bend on certain points: no immediate sacking of the city, no mass executions if certain conditions were met. And as Tyrion read, he felt his heart pound with a strange mixture of dread, relief. He had expected a refusal. This was not that. Cersei reached for the letter, but Tyrion pivoted so she could not snatch it from his hand. Her face flushed with anger. "Tell me what he says." Tyrion released a measured breath. "He says he'll speak, but he wants to do so on ground of his choosing, in the open, with no more than 10 men on each side. He reaffirms his claim that Joffrey is a bastard born of incest, and that the throne belongs to him, but he also suggests a willingness to spare the city if those who are truly responsible face justice." He folded the parchment carefully. "He wants me to come alone, or nearly alone." Joffrey barked out a derisive laugh. "You mean to say he wants me to surrender the throne?" He turned wild eyes on Tyrion. "If you go to him, you'll give him everything he wants." "No, I forbid it." Tyrion met his nephew's gaze calmly. "Your Grace, I serve at your pleasure. But if we do not even attempt these talks, we might as well prepare ourselves for a siege that will leave the city a smoking ruin. Would you have thousands of loyal subjects starve or burn just to spare yourself the indignity of negotiation?" Joffrey looked away, clearly unsettled by the mention of starving subjects. But it was Cersei who spoke next, voice dripping with scorn. "You're playing a dangerous game, Tyrion. You assume Stannis' word is worth something. He might snatch you up, use you as a hostage, or worse, kill you outright and mount your head on a spike to demoralize us." Tyrion gave her a half-smile. "I suppose that's a risk I'm willing to take." He let his words hang, for he knew how little love Cersei bore him. His death would be an inconvenience for her, but perhaps not a grief. "But if we show good faith, if we meet him with a small retinue, he says no more than 10 men, then we have a chance. A chance is more than we had before." Cersei stared at him, rage warring with the faintest flicker of calculation. Perhaps, Tyrion thought, she sees that if I die, one of her problems is solved. But also, if I succeed, we might just survive this with the city intact. He could almost see the thoughts dancing behind her green eyes. Finally, she spoke. "Do what you will, but do not expect us to save you if you're fool enough to wander into his trap." That was as close to approval as Tyrion would get. He nodded sharply. "I'll need a small escort, Bronn naturally, maybe the Hound." Tyrion paused. "He's formidable, but he's sworn to Joffrey. Another show of good faith might be to not bring him, but I'd prefer to have one Kingsguard by my side, even if it's Meryn Trant." Joffrey bristled at the mention of the Hound. "Sandor is mine to command, not yours. But if I let him go, you might get ideas." Tyrion sighed. "As you wish. It might be wise to include Sir Balon Swan, who seems more level-headed than Trant or Sir Meryn. We'll bring a few of the better swords from the City Watch as well. That's all. 10 men as Stannis asks." The days that followed saw tension ratchet higher in King's Landing. Whispers ran like wildfire through the streets. Tyrion Lannister was going to treat with the enemy. Tyrion Lannister was going to switch allegiances. Tyrion Lannister was going to lure Stannis into a trap. It amazed Tyrion how rumors often carried a kernel of truth and a bushel of falsehood, combining into a swirling pot of speculation. He ignored it all, focusing on the logistics of the meeting. He set the location with Stannis envoys by Raven, a wide meadow outside the city's eastern gates, near the river, far enough that neither side's archers could cause trouble. The day arrived, bright and hot, the sun glaring down upon the meager retinue that formed behind Tyrion. Bronn rode at his side, easy in the saddle. Sir Balon Swan sat tall on his destrier. With them came 7 men of the City Watch, each armed but instructed to keep swords sheathed unless threatened. Outside the gates, the small folk watched with something akin to awe and fear as the party trotted onto the dusty road. The land beyond the city walls felt too wide, the horizon too open. Tyrion's nerves thrummed with each step his horse took. At any moment he half expected some hidden host of Stannis' men to charge over a ridge. But as they approached the designated meadow, he saw only a small group waiting beneath a hastily erected white pavilion. 9 men by Tyrion's count, and a single woman standing near the front in red robes. Melisandre of Eshai, Tyrion realized with a jolt. The Red Woman. He had heard stories. Everyone had. Whispers of her dark magic, of shadows and the burning of the 7 in Dragonstone. A figure of deep menace, if the rumors were true. But more pressing than that was the man standing beside her. Tall, gaunt, face set in grim determination. Stannis Baratheon Dottoboin. His jaw was tight, his mouth a thin line of repressed fury, or perhaps indignation that he'd been forced to meet an imp course. He wore a black surcoat with the flaming heart of the Lord of Light, and above that, the crowned stag of House Baratheon. Tyrion rided in his horse, dismounted with Bronn's help. He felt the earth under his boots, dust swirling around his ankles. Swallowing the dryness in his throat, he moved forward. Stannis' men parted to allow him through, each stare heavy with contempt or suspicion. Melisandre's red robes were a stark dash of color, her copper hair shining under the sun. Her eyes, dark and glittering, lingered on Tyrion's face as though appraising his soul. Stannis did not bow. He inclined his head the barest fraction. Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion did his best to produce a polite bow without seeming subservient. Lord Stannis, thank you for agreeing to speak. A muscle in Stannis' cheek twitched. I agreed for the sake of the realm, he said in a brusque tone. Not for you or your whelp of a king. Tyrion felt heat creep into his cheeks but swallowed the retort. Then let us proceed in that spirit, what is best for the realm. Stannis' stony gaze flicked over Tyrion's escorts, counting. I see you have honored the limit. As I have done. He gestured to the men behind him. These are mine, men who remain loyal to the true king. His voice was clipped, self-assured in that conviction. Then he nodded once more at Melisandre. And this is Lady Melisandre, who has guided me through the darkness. Tyrion offered the Red Woman a courteous nod. She watched him with an eerie intensity that set his nerves on edge. I am pleased to make your acquaintance, Tyrion said, forcing a thin smile, though her stare unsettled him deeply. Melisandre inclined her head in return, voice smooth as silk. May the Lord of Light guide us all in these dark times. There was a hint of amusement in her eyes, as though she knew how off-balance Tyrion felt. They entered the pavilion, leaving their retinues outside. Inside there was a simple table set upon the grass, its surface bearing a few cups, a flagon of wine, some bread. Clearly a gesture for negotiation. Tyrion and Stannis faced each other across that table. Melisandre stood behind Stannis' left shoulder, and Bronn placed himself near Tyrion, watchful. The flicker of tension was palpable in the air. Tyrion cleared his throat. Shall we speak plainly, my lord? The city is braced for your assault, yet you have proposed we might avoid such destruction if certain conditions are met. He glanced at Stannis' face. I am here to learn those conditions from your lips, and to see if there is any common ground. Stannis folded his arms over his chest. The boy on the throne is no true king. Joffrey Baratheon is an abomination born of incest, fathered by Jaime Lannister upon Cersei. I will not mince words. That is the truth, and I am the rightful heir after my brother Robert's demise. The Iron Throne belongs to me. If your city surrenders, if the Lannisters vacate their claims and return to Casterly Rock, if the traitors are put to justice, I will spare King's Landing the horrors of war. The small folk will not suffer for Lannister pride. And now, Lilwindar. Tyrion managed a half bow. Direct as ever, my lord. But, you know the boy sits the throne with the support of the great houses of the Westerlands. And the Tyrells have, after Renly's tragic passing, allied themselves with my sister through Margaery Tyrell's betrothal to Joffrey. You are outnumbered, at least in the field. If the city stands behind Joffrey, do you truly expect to storm the walls and seat yourself without incurring great cost? No, sure. A shadow flickered across Stannis' face. I do what I must for duty. If it costs me men, it costs me men. I have the Lord of Light on my side. Even the Tyrells will see reason if the Lannisters are swept away. His lips pressed together. Yet we both know war is unpredictable. I offer an alternative. I will not storm the city if certain concessions are made. Tyrion placed a hand on the table, leaning forward. Name them. Stannis exhaled through his nose as though stifling frustration. Your nephew abdicates. He retires, whether to Casterly Rock or the Wall, I care not. Your sister, the Queen Regent, stands trial for her crimes. The Lannister claim is renounced in perpetuity. In return, the small folk of King's Landing remain unmolested. The city gates open, the Lannister banners come down, and my men march in peacefully. He glanced pointedly at Tyrion. I do not intend to punish the people of King's Landing for the sins of House Lannister. But justice must be served. His voice resonated with the kind of fervor that Tyrion often found naive. That unwavering moral compass might have been admirable in a calmer world, but Tyrion knew it could also be a sword that cut both ways. Tyrion rubbed his temple. You do realize, he said slowly, that the Lannisters will never hand over the throne so easily. Joffrey is not known for listening to reason. He hesitated. But let us suppose for a moment that I were to present this to the council. If you want to avoid bloodshed, might we find a compromise in which Joffrey remains the king but recognizes you with a high seat, a place of high honor? Stannis' eyes flashed. Never. I will not bend the knee to a child of incest. Tyrion expected that answer, but it still set his teeth on edge. And if he refuses to step aside, then you mean to attack the city, to kill thousands, burn homes, starve families. Stannis made a tight gesture with his hand. Bloodshed is the price of treason. But I have no desire to see innocents burned. That is why I offered this parley. The choice is yours. Now, Zay. The conversation continued for hours, Tyrion trying every angle he could. He invoked the stability of the realm, the threat of the north, the possibility that if King's Landing fell too easily, others might rise against Stannis in the chaos. He spoke of how the Lannisters were not entirely without resources. They had gold, cunning, alliances that might be leveraged to ensure a peaceful resolution. Could Stannis not accept a regency of some sort, or a partial transition of power with minimal chaos? But Stannis was iron, unyielding on the central point. Joffrey must go, and justice for Cersei must be served. With evening approaching, they broke to rest. A sense of stalemate hung in the pavilion. Tyrion, exhausted, lowered himself onto a small stool, allowing his mind to race. Stannis and Melisandre spoke quietly in the corner, the Red Woman's voice drifting like a hush of wind. Bronn, ever watchful, poured Tyrion a cup of watered wine. Looks like we're not getting far with this lot, he muttered. Tyrion drank deeply. I wonder. Stannis is unmovable in certain ways, but the fact that we're here at all suggests he wants an out. He wants to avoid a siege if he can. I need to find something that can make him waver. Possibly the notion of helping him prove Joffrey's parentage beyond doubt. But that might doom my house. He grimaced. Tricky. Bronn just snorted. Tricky, aye. But that's what you do. When the conversation resumed under the red glow of sunset, Tyrion proposed a second meeting. We have come far today, my lord, but we need more time. Let me return to the city with your demands. Let me try to talk sense into the council. We should meet again in 2 days. If you agree, it might show faith that you do not intend to begin your assault tomorrow. No. Stannis' jaw was set, but he nodded grudgingly. 2 days, at midday. Return here. If you fail to appear, I will know your answer. They parted, each side retreating to their strongholds, suspicion heavy in the air. Tyrion rode back to King's Landing, mind swirling with half-formed plans. By the time he reached the Red Keep, it was past nightfall, and the city was quiet with a trembling hush. Torchlight flickered on the walls as he and his escort entered through the gates. He felt the stares of men who had no knowledge of what had transpired. All too soon, Tyrion was face to face with Cersei and Joffrey again. The boy king paced, chewing his lip. Cersei demanded answers, a glass of wine clutched in her hand. With measured words, Tyrion recounted Stannis' intractable stance. The throne or nothing, the arrest of Cersei, the renunciation of Joffrey's claim. Joffrey erupted, cursing Stannis, cursing Tyrion for being weak. Cersei's face was a mask of cold fury. They let him finish, then cursed him for even suggesting the possibility that Joffrey might step down. "Is this how you think to help us?" Cersei sneered. "You prattle about compromise, but Stannis demands my head. You think I shall just lay it upon his chopping block?" Tyrion spread his hands. "Sister, I am telling you what he demands. I am not saying we must acquiesce. But if we continue on this path, he will assault the city. He might well breach the walls. We can use wildfire. We can deploy every cunning measure at our disposal. But you know as well as I do that the cost of that war will be high." "Nay." Joffrey, pale and shaking, slammed a fist on the table. "I'd sooner die than yield to that pretender." Tyrion breathed a tired sigh. "Your Grace, you may get your wish if we do not find a solution." In the days that followed, the small council turned itself in knots, each lord and advisor bickering about the next step. Tywin was away with the bulk of the Lannister forces, trying to contain Robb Stark. Margaery Tyrell was in the city, but her family's armies were encamped in the Reach, uncertain whether to march or wait. Petyr Baelish had quietly returned, but offered only cryptic suggestions that might have ended in treachery. Varys listened and watched, occasionally dropping a subtle piece of wisdom that only Tyrion seemed to truly appreciate. Amid the chaos, Tyrion arranged the second meeting. Again, he rode out to the pavilion with a handful of men, this time under the watchful eye of the Gold Cloaks. Word had spread through the city that the imp was off to treat with Stannis again, and the tension among the small folk was palpable. Many hoped Tyrion might prevent the horrors of a siege. Others thought him a fool dancing on a razor's edge. This time Stannis was less patient. He demanded immediate progress, not a recitation of Joffrey's refusal. Tyrion tried to offer alternatives. "Surely, my lord, there is some middle road. King's Landing is not just a trophy to be claimed. It is the heart of the Seven Kingdoms, a realm in turmoil. If you seize it by force, the realm may well fracture further, giving the Iron Islands freedom to raid the western coast, while the north might remain in rebellion under Robb Stark. Consider a more careful path. If you promise amnesty to certain key figures, such as my father Tywin Lannister, or the new alliance with the Tyrells, perhaps we might persuade them that supporting you is in their best interest. Would that not smooth your path?" "Nine." Stannis' fists clenched. "Your father is no friend of mine, and the Tyrells supported my traitorous brother Renly. They would never bend the knee so easily. If they do, it is only to betray me later. Now in Willagee." Melisandre's voice drifted like a velvet glove. "The night is dark and full of terrors, Lord Tyrion, yet the Lord of Light reveals the path. Stannis is the chosen one, Azor Ahai reborn. Only he can bring salvation to these lands. You would do well to remember that we do not fear traitors or shadowy conspiracies. We see through the darkness." Tyrion suppressed a shiver. He had no desire to tangle with the Red Woman's fanaticism. "I understand your faith," he managed, "but men cannot live on faith alone. They need bread, peace, and a semblance of stability. The Lannisters, for all our faults, have controlled the throne since the passing of King Robert. The city has not starved or burned in that time. If we could promise your lord a peaceful handover." Stannis slammed his palm on the table. "I will not share the throne. I will not wait another day longer than I must. I came here for your acceptance of my demands, not for some half-baked compromise." Tyrion flinched. The force in Stannis' voice was formidable. "All right," he said quietly. "Then if your demands remain unwavering, I have a question for you. Why meet at all? You could try to storm the walls tomorrow. Why not do so if you are so confident?" Stannis' gaze flickered, and for a moment, Tyrion sensed the man's deep frustration. "Because war is costly. My men are loyal, but they tire. Supplies dwindle. If I were to take King's Landing by siege, it might take weeks or months, time in which my enemies grow stronger or claim other parts of the realm. I should have seized the city after Renly's death, but I delayed. If there is a path to avoid the attrition, I will take it." Tyrion nodded slowly. "Then you see why negotiation might be worth pursuing. All right, let us propose something else. You speak of justice for the sins of House Lannister. What if I bring you the truth of those sins? Evidence of Joffrey's parentage, proof that he is not Robert's son, documents, testimonies, the accounts of those who would confirm the incest between my sister and my brother. Would that sway you to be more lenient with the city as a whole? Stannis' eyes narrowed. I know the truth already. It is why I fight. Tyrion pressed on. But the realm does not. Many whisper, but rumors are not the same as public, undeniable proof. Perhaps we can arrange a formal hearing, one that would allow you to reveal the truth openly, thereby weakening the Lannisters' position. The city might turn to you if they see that Joffrey is not Robert's rightful heir. Melisandre's gaze sharpened, as though she found this intriguing. She placed a hand on Stannis' arm, and the Lord's stiff posture eased marginally. He turned back to Tyrion. Go on. Tyrion exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. We hold a trial of legitimacy. Grand Maester Pycelle, members of the court, witnesses from the Red Keep. Some may speak the truth if pressed. We might gather enough evidence to prove beyond doubt that Joffrey is Jaime's son. If that is done publicly, it might force the city to accept your claim. My father is cunning. Yes, but if the people riot at the knowledge of incest on the throne, Tyrion may see the writing. A loaded silence followed. Stannis' face was pensive. You propose I trust your city's officials to hold a fair trial? And if they find Joffrey legitimate or refuse to hear evidence, what then? Tyrion rubbed his brow. I propose we ensure that the trial is incontestable. That is the tricky part. The only way to do so might be to have some of your envoys present, to let them question witnesses. That may require a short truce, a temporary ceasefire, while we organize the hearing. He let that idea settle. In essence, we let the realm judge, with you ensuring that the truth is not quashed. Stannis cast a quick glance at Melisandre. Her lips curved in a slight smile. Lies crumble before the Lord of Light, she said softly. And truth will shine. Tyrion almost rolled his eyes at her piety but held back. Stannis studied Tyrion with an intensity that bordered on discomfort. If you speak truly, we might consider it, but I will not be made a fool of. If this is a delaying tactic, I will bring fire and blood to your walls. It is not, Tyrion said. I want to avoid bloodshed. I give you my word. I will attempt to see that the trial is fair, or at least that the truth is heard. You will, of course, have the chance to present your case. But you must also promise not to attack while this process is arranged. That includes infiltration, sabotage, or anything that might undermine the city's defenses before we reach a verdict. No. Stannis' mouth pressed into a grim line. I will consider your offer. You will have my answer on the morrow. That night, Tyrion returned again to the Red Keep, feeling a spark of hope amid the swirling doubt. Immediately, he was summoned to Joffrey's presence. The boy sat upon the Iron Throne, gazing down with eyes that burned with hatred and anxiety. Cersei stood beside him, a single candle illuminating her face, making her cheekbones sharp. What nonsense is this about a trial? Joffrey demanded. I hear from my guards that you intend to put me on trial. I am your king. Tyrion forced calm. Not a trial of you, your grace. A trial of truth about your parentage, to prove that Stannis' accusations are baseless. He spoke the lie as smoothly as he could, ignoring the dryness in his mouth. We shall show the realm that you are Robert's son beyond doubt, and in so doing, we undercut Stannis' entire claim. He might withdraw if his cause is proven false. Cersei's eyes narrowed, gleaning the subtext. She knew how precarious their lie was. Still, she was cunning enough not to protest openly before all the attendants. You risk much by giving Stannis a forum, she said in a low voice. Tyrion nodded. I do, but the alternative is siege, sister. If we can outmaneuver him in a trial, we might spare the city. Joffrey rose from the throne, fists clenched. I'll never let him so much as step foot in the city. If you bring him inside these walls, I'll have him beheaded before he can speak. Tyrion bit back a retort. We must appear fair, he said. Or else the lords of Westeros will side with the man who claims you are not Robert's true son. Let him speak, and we will tear apart his accusations with evidence of your parentage. He managed to keep a straight face, even though he knew the evidence was wholly fabricated. Robert's bastards, the black-haired babes, all gone or hidden. The rumors about Jaime and Cersei, about the golden-haired children, any who looked closely could see the truth. The best Tyrion could hope for was that no one in the city dared speak out, or that they might be too afraid to do so. After a tense pause, Cersei placed a hand on Joffrey's arm. Very well, she said, voice carefully measured. We shall prepare our own proofs. We will ensure that Pycelle and others testify that the records show you were conceived while Robert was at court, and so forth. If this is the only way to keep Stannis at bay, so be it. But know this, Tyrion. If he sets foot in this city, I will see him clapped in irons, truce or no truce. Nay, what do I? Tyrion returned her gaze levelly. That would be unwise, he said. If you do that, his men will launch an immediate attack, and we will be undone. We must uphold the rules of parley. Any betrayal on our part would destroy what little trust we've built. Joffrey's face twisted in disgust. I hate trusting him, he muttered, but I hate the idea of the city in flames more. So it was agreed, though the tension in the Red Keep soared to new heights. Tyrion spent the next day quelling rumors, pacifying the more volatile members of the council, and drafting an official invitation to Stannis for a public hearing to address the question of the throne's rightful heir. It was an unprecedented measure, and in his heart, Tyrion knew it was fraught with peril. Yet he clung to the idea that if the appearance of justice were maintained, perhaps the common folk and the lesser lords might remain calm, at least long enough for a more diplomatic outcome. Varys, ever the whispering spider, cornered Tyrion in the corridors to offer his perspective. My dear Lord Tyrion, you are a man of remarkable ingenuity. Only you would devise such a cunning ploy to unmask Stannis or to placate him, though which is it? Tyrion gave him a thin smile. I'm not sure I know anymore. Perhaps both. Either we prove Joffrey's legitimacy and quell the rebellion, or we prove his illegitimacy and, well, that's unthinkable. He sighed. All I know is that if we do nothing, the city will burn. Varys' eyes gleamed. Quite so. Perhaps it will be interesting to see how the pieces fall. Should I arrange for any particular witnesses to appear, or to vanish? No, ne'er. Tyrion thought carefully. We must orchestrate this just so. Stannis will likely bring his own evidence, perhaps rumors from Jon Arryn's old investigations. We need to counter that, or muddy the waters enough that no one can be certain. If any of Robert's bastards remain in the city, they must be kept silent. That means Gendry, if he's still alive, must remain hidden. Any others as well. We need Pycelle to trot out the official records, the accounts of King Robert's visits to Cersei's bedchamber. Perhaps we even produce the lie that Robert wrote, a letter naming Joffrey heir. Something that looks official enough. Now. Varys bobbed his head. I shall see what I can do, but be warned, my friend. This path you tread is the narrowest of edges, and a fall on either side will be your doom. Days stretched on as the city prepared for a bizarre spectacle. Rumors spread in the streets that King Joffrey would host Stannis Baratheon for a public hearing. Some said it was a trap, that the Red Keep would be rigged with wildfire to burn Stannis, and all who dared follow him. Others whispered that Tyrion Lannister was planning to open the gates to the rightful king. The tension was thick enough to taste. Finally, a date was set. Stannis sent word that he would attend with a delegation, under a guarantee of safe passage. The gates of the city opened under a heavy guard. King's Landing had never seen anything quite like it, the rightful king by blood or the boy king by birth, a question to be settled in a formal hearing. Tywin Lannister was still absent, too far away to exert control, and Margaery Tyrell remained quietly watchful, uncertain how this might shift her marriage prospects. Tyrion's stomach churned on the morning Stannis arrived. From atop the walls he watched as a column of soldiers, no more than 200, rode toward the city. They bore the crowned stag sigil, along with the red heart of Arlor. A hush gripped the crowds that had gathered. The men carried themselves with discipline and solemnity. At their head rode Stannis on a tall war horse, Melisandre to his left, and Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, on his right, the banners of Stannis' house rippling behind them. At the gates, they were met by a contingent of gold-cloaked city watch under Sir Jacelyn Bywater, who escorted them through the narrow streets toward the Red Keep. Commoners watched from windows and rooftops, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. The Red Keep's great doors opened, and Stannis dismounted in the courtyard. Tyrion, flanked by Bronn, stepped forward to greet him. We welcome you, Lord Stannis, under the terms of truce, Tyrion said, voice echoing off the stone. He sensed hundreds of archers on the ramparts above, stationed in case treachery erupted. You and your party are granted safe passage for the duration of this hearing. Stannis' face was grim, but he nodded. Melisandre's red robes billowed in the breeze, and Tyrion could see her gaze flick about, as if sensing for danger. Davos Seaworth offered a small bow, his hand, missing fingertips, evident as he placed it on his sword pommel in a gesture of caution. Inside the throne room, the Iron Throne loomed tall as ever, a twisted mass of blades. Joffrey sat upon it in his best finery, a crown perched on his golden curls. To his left, Cersei stood in regal attire, her face impassive. To the right of the dais, the lords of the small council were arrayed in a show of unity. Rows of spectators and guards lined the walls. Tyrion guided Stannis to a space before the throne, surrounded by an open area. No doubt each side was wary, searching for signs of betrayal. Tyrion cleared his throat and addressed the assembled. "We gather today under an unprecedented arrangement, a hearing to address the question of succession to the Iron Throne. Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone, claims that his grace, King Joffrey, is not Robert Baratheon's trueborn son. King Joffrey denies this accusation. By the laws of the realm, we shall weigh the evidence." Joffrey's knuckles whitened on the throne's arms as Tyrion spoke the word accusation, but he said nothing. His mother's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, a reminder to keep still. Stannis stepped forward, voice ringing. "I come here not to entertain illusions. I come to lay bare the truth. Robert Baratheon was my brother, and he had black hair, as did every true Baratheon heir we have known for centuries. Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella all bear golden locks. The rumors of Lannister incest are no mere rumor. Jaime Lannister is the father of these children, and Cersei has deceived the realm." Nan. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtiers and onlookers. Cersei's face tightened. Tyrion watched closely, praying that this carefully orchestrated charade would not unravel too soon. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled forward at Tyrion's beckoning, carrying a heavy tome. "His grace was conceived while King Robert was away on campaign, it is said, but I have records showing that the king returned to the capital for a fortnight, during which time he spent many nights in the queen's chambers." Pycelle's voice trembled slightly, and he cleared his throat. "Furthermore, I recall that Lady Cersei, then queen, was rarely absent from court. By all accounts, the timing aligns with Joffrey's known birth." Stannis cut in. "How convenient. Where is the sworn testimony of those who attended the king? Where is the proof?" "I have letters from Jon Arryn himself, notes that speak of the sea being strong, references to Robert's trueborn children all sharing his coloring. I have testimonies from men who saw the queen's dalliances with her brother. Men who disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Number one." The crowd gasped at that scandalous claim. Joffrey snarled from atop the throne. "They lie. All of them lie. My mother never." Stannis raised a hand. "Behold the color of your hair, boy. The color of your uncle's hair. You share his features, not your father's. Did you not wonder why not a single one of Robert's children by other women bore your golden coloring?" Nuan. Tyrion stepped forward before Joffrey could lash out. "We are here for testimony, not accusations alone. Lord Stannis, do you have any living witnesses who can corroborate these claims?" At that prompt, Stannis gestured, and Davos Seaworth drew forth a simple letter, which was handed to Tyrion. Tyrion skimmed its contents, snippets of Jon Arryn's investigation, references to black-haired bastards fathered by Robert. The so-called seed is strong motto. The hush in the throne room deepened. Now was the moment Tyrion had feared. If someone produced a living undeniable bastard of Robert's, the entire proceeding might collapse in an instant. That was the real threat. But so far, none such was presented. Instead, Stannis hammered on the notes and the hair color argument. That alone might sway many, but the Lannisters had prepared their counters. Pycelle again recited official records from the Red Keep's ledgers, showing that Robert's presence and attendance upon Cersei matched the time of Joffrey's conception. Cersei feigned outrage, commanding Pycelle to confirm that she was faithful. Sir Meryn Trant, Sir Boros Blount, and others were called to testify that they'd never seen Jaime and Cersei in a compromising position. The entire affair became a spectacle. Both sides hurled claims and denials. Tyrion felt sweat bead on his brow as hour after hour passed. Stannis refused to relent, pointing out one discrepancy after another, but each time, a Lannister retort was read aloud. The Watchers were left uncertain, torn between the old rumor and the new official account. In the midst of the confusion, Melisandre's voice rose, strong and certain. I speak with the authority of the Lord of Light. Darkness has cloaked this falsehood too long. In the flames I have seen the truth. Joffrey Baratheon is a product of corruption. Justice will come for those who embrace shadows and lies. Some in the hall cowered, for they'd heard tales of her power. Others jeered, for they saw her as a foreign priestess with no place in their 7 kingdoms. The tension was near breaking. Tyrion realized that if this hearing did not produce a clear outcome, if the crowd remained divided, the city might tear itself apart. He stepped into the center of the hall, raising his hands for silence. We have heard many claims, he said loudly. We have listened to the evidence of Lord Stannis, who believes wholeheartedly that Joffrey is not Robert's son. We have also heard the official testimony of the Red Keep, that Joffrey was fathered by King Robert during a documented visit. If we remain divided, we risk war. War that will engulf the city in blood and horror. As Hand of the King, I propose that these proceedings continue with a formal inquest of those who served King Robert intimately, so that we might have more conclusive evidence. Stannis bristled. More delays. Tyrion pressed on. An inquest of a mere fortnight, he said. In that time, let the Watcher see if we can produce any living child of Robert's besides Joffrey. Let them see if we can confirm, beyond doubt, that the timing of Joffrey's birth matches Robert's presence. If after that time the truth remains uncertain, then let the matter be taken before the Great Council. Let the lords of the realm decide as they did for King Aegon II and others before him. Let the weight of the realm's judgment fall where it must. A stir swept through the hall as he invoked a great council. Many remembered how such councils had decided matters of succession in the past. Tyrion's hope was that this would diffuse the immediate crisis, providing a path to a resolution without open war. Meanwhile, he prayed that his father or the Tyrells would do something behind the scenes to shift the balance. Stannis' eyes blazed. A fortnight. And in that time, do you let me remain outside the city walls, with my men at the ready? Joffrey hissed. I won't let you camp outside my city like an invitation for traitors. Tyrion spoke over his nephew. Lord Stannis, you may withdraw to your encampment, but we ask that you keep the peace for these 2 weeks. If no resolution is found by then we must accept the Great Council's authority. Or, if you deem that unacceptable, we shall see how the city chooses to respond. I see. Silence pressed heavy. For a moment it seemed Stannis would refuse. His jaw worked, and he turned to exchange a look with Melisandre, then Davos. The Onion Knight quietly murmured something, and Stannis' shoulders stiffened. Finally, he inclined his head once, sharply. A fortnight. But if I see any treachery, if your mother or your sister attempts some cunning betrayal, know that I will turn my fury upon the city. No. Joffrey half rose in fury, but Tyrion quickly bowed. Thank you, my lord. Let us all pray to the 7, or to whichever gods we keep, that truth shall be served in peace. The crowds dispersed with hushed voices. The tension had not vanished, merely postponed. Tyrion escorted Stannis and his retinue back through the Red Keep's corridors. The tall, gaunt man cast sidelong glances as if expecting a trap. None came. When they reached the courtyard, Stannis mounted his horse. Melisandre's red robes fluttered as she regarded Tyrion with an enigmatic smile. You are clever, half-man, she murmured. But beware. Clever men often overstep, and the darkness claims them. Tyrion suppressed a shudder. I'll keep that in mind, he said, forcing a strained smile. They left under the gold cloak's watchful eyes, riding back to their camp on the outskirts of the city. Tyrion remained in the courtyard, exhaling slowly. He felt drained to his very bones, as though he had aged a decade. Around him, Lannister guards exchanged uneasy glances. That evening, King's Landing trembled with rumor. Word had spread of the hearing's inconclusive result. Some believed Stannis had proven his case. Others insisted the Lannisters had shown him up as a fraud. Many were simply confused. The wine sinks and alleys buzzed with talk of an upcoming Great Council, or of more treachery to come. Mobs gathered in Flea Bottom, demanding bread and cheaper provisions, for the threat of siege still loomed. Tyrion felt the weight of it all pressing on him. As Hand of the King, he was expected to hold the city together. He missed Shay's warmth, missed a carefree evening of jest and wine. But the burden was too heavy now. He spent long hours locked in his solar, conferring with Varys, Bronn, and a handful of allies. He had 14 days, no, 13 now, to somehow navigate a path to avoid war. It seemed impossible. Even if by some miracle the city was convinced Joffrey was Robert's trueborn son, Stannis would likely claim the hearing was rigged. And if the hearing went the other way, the Lannisters would never yield quietly. Meanwhile, Stannis' forces remained encamped near the bay. Tyrion heard reports that they were constructing siege towers, reinforcing catapults, preparing for a sudden assault if negotiations failed. The chain across Blackwater Bay was ready, the wildfire casks hidden among the city's walls and secret cellars. If diplomacy collapsed, Tyrion planned to unleash the green fire and incinerate Stannis' fleet. The horror of that plan haunted him nightly. So the days crawled onward. Stannis' men made no move to storm the city, though scouts reported occasional skirmishes on the roads. Within the Red Keep, tension flared. Joffrey complained bitterly about being forced to wait. Cersei seethed, her eyes glittering with anger whenever she passed Tyrion in the halls. Perhaps she suspected that if the truth came out, her fate was sealed. Perhaps she blamed Tyrion for not finding a quicker way to rid them of Stannis. More than once, she suggested using wildfire preemptively, turning the bay into a funeral pyre for Stannis ships. Tyrion argued vehemently against it, reminding her that the city would suffer if the wind changed or if the chain was not properly deployed. One night, as Tyrion reclined in his chair, a goblet of wine in hand, he turned to Varys. "We stand on a knife's edge. If the Great Council is convened, lords from across the realm will gather. Some might side with Stannis out of fear or hatred for the Lannisters. Others might support Joffrey in hopes of Tywin's gold. The Tyrells might go whichever way benefits them. We could see the realm fracturing further." Varys nodded, face pensive. "A delicate dance indeed. But do not forget, my lord, that chaos is also an opportunity. If we can strike the right bargains, if we can appeal to enough powerful houses, we might tip the scales." "Dani. Perhaps," Tyrion said. "But at what cost?" Varys did not answer. The two men drank in silence, each lost in thought. On the 10th day of the fortnight, news spread that Tywin Lannister was marching south with his host, intending to bolster the city's defenses. Reports suggested he might arrive within a week or more. If Tywin reached King's Landing before the final hearing, it could shift the balance decisively. Stannis must have known that too, because on the 11th day, his envoys arrived at the gates, demanding an immediate resolution rather than waiting out the full 2 weeks. "We have no faith in the so-called inquest," they proclaimed. "Stannis will have his throne, or he will take it by steel and flame." Tyrion scrambled to stave off a direct confrontation. He promised that the Great Council invitation had already been sent to lords across the realm, though the ravages of war made travel difficult. A compromise was reached to hold a final hearing on the 14th day, with or without the presence of the entire realm. Stannis' envoys returned to their camp, warning that if the outcome did not favor the rightful king, the city would burn. As day 14 approached, the tension turned into a taut wire on the verge of snapping. Cersei drank more wine than ever, prowling the corridors like a caged lioness. Joffrey stayed locked in his chambers, occasionally bellowing at servants. Tyrion tried to piece together the final illusions they would present at the hearing, fabricating more records, threatening or bribing potential witnesses who might speak of Jaime and Cersei's affair. Bronn was posted on every crucial corner ready to silence loose tongues. At dawn on the appointed day, the bells of the city tolled a somber note. The throne room prepared once again for the spectacle. Tapestries had been hung to give an air of decorum. The dais was crowded with the court. Joffrey wore a crimson doublet under his golden crown, face pale and eyes restless. Tyrion stood by his side, feeling like a man about to juggle wildfire. Then Stannis entered, flanked by his knights. His footsteps on the floor echoed in the hush. Melisandre glided behind him, face serene. Ser Davos kept a careful watch. No seats were offered. This was to be a swift proceeding. A hush fell as the tall, grim Baratheon squared his shoulders. "I have grown tired of these charades," Stannis declared, voice like thunder in the hall. "Bring forth your final proofs or yield." Tyrion felt the eyes of the realm upon him. But as he stepped forward, prepared to deliver his well-rehearsed line, something happened. A sudden shout echoed from the back of the hall. The doors flung open, and a group of gold cloaks rushed in, chasing a young man who stumbled onto the floor. He had dark hair, a lean frame, and eyes that burned with desperation. Tyrion's breath caught. He recognized the boy, though they had never met. Gendry, Robert Baratheon's bastard. The very living proof Stannis had sought. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Joffrey shot to his feet. "Who is this wretch?" he demanded. Gendry raised his chin defiantly, glancing at Tyrion but then fixing his gaze on Stannis. "They tried to kill me before," he said, voice echoing in the sudden stillness. "All for being King Robert's bastard. But I won't hide anymore. If you want proof, here it is. Look at me." He turned so all could see his black hair, his strong jaw, so reminiscent of Robert in his youth. "I am his son, and I'll swear it on the seven." A roar of confusion spread through the hall. Cersei hissed something under her breath. Joffrey's eyes nearly popped from his head. Stannis' lips parted in an expression close to triumph. He turned swiftly to Joffrey. "There's your proof, false king. Robert's blood was strong, black of hair. The only reason your hair is golden is because your father is the Kingslayer." All illusions, all carefully spun lies, threatened to collapse in that instant. Tyrion's mind whirled, trying to see a way out, but it was as if the final thread had been cut. In the back of the throne room, the crowd pressed forward, shouting. Some cried that they saw Robert in the boy, some cursed the Lannisters, others called for calm. Gendry, breathing hard, stood there like a living testament to Joffrey's illegitimacy. Stannis advanced, capturing the moment. "You see now, this city and its people have been deceived. Let me claim the throne that is mine by right. I will not have to send your sons and daughters to die in a siege." His voice rose. "I am Stannis of the House Baratheon, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. Bow before me or face my wrath." Joffrey snarled a curse, drawing his sword, though he did not descend the dais. Cersei's face twisted with fury. Tyrion took a step forward, trying to keep the peace. "Calm, let us remain calm. One bastard is not conclusive proof." But the hall was devolving into chaos. Knights loyal to the crown moved forward to protect Joffrey. Some gold cloaks faltered, uncertain whether to obey the king or to heed the new evidence. Stannis' men pressed a ring around him, hands on hilts. Shouts rose to the rafters. Above it all, Gendry stood trembling, half in shock at what he had just done, half in fury at the life that had been denied him. Tyrion's stomach lurched. This was the disaster he had tried so desperately to avoid. Melisandre's voice pierced the clamor. "The darkness shall be scattered. All hail the true king." Suddenly, Joffrey screamed, "Guards, seize that black-haired traitor! Seize them all!" Swords flashed, and the throne room exploded into pandemonium. Stannis roared for his knights to defend him. The gold cloaks who remained loyal to the Lannisters tried to force the intruders back, while others hesitated or joined in the fray. Tyrion saw steel glint, saw men fall, heard the sickening crunch of a blade striking flesh. Cersei shrieked for her son, tugging him back behind the dais. Tyrion tried to wade into the tumult, shouting for calm, but no one listened. The Red Keep's throne room had turned into a battlefield. A ring of Stannis' knights fought a cluster of gold cloaks near the center, each side hacking at the other while terrified courtiers screamed and scattered. Stannis himself, sword drawn, advanced slowly, as if meaning to reach Joffrey. But a tide of men intervened. Tyrion ducked to avoid a sweeping blade, fumbling for a dagger at his belt. Bronn appeared at his side, parrying an attack from a Lannister guard who had no idea whose side anyone was on. "Time to leave, my lord," Bronn shouted, eyes wild. Tyrion glanced at the dais. Joffrey and Cersei were retreating through a side door, escorted by Kingsguard. Stannis' path was blocked by a line of halberds, but more of the Red Woman's fanatics pushed in from behind. It was bedlam, total and immediate. The realm's fragile peace had shattered in an instant. Tyrion cursed under his breath. "We must restore order, or the city is lost." Bronn fended off a blow from another guard, slaying him with a quick thrust. "Order? That's done. We have to get out before the real soldiers pour in. A clarion horn sounded from somewhere in the Red Keep, echoing ominously. More guards would soon flood the throne room. If Stannis was captured or killed here, his men outside the walls might retaliate. If Joffrey was harmed, the Lannisters would unleash wildfire. The city would drown in blood. As Tyrion turned in desperation, he saw Gendry slip away in the chaos, probably trying to avoid the swirling blades. Stannis, pinned down, bellowed commands to his knights. Melisandre stood in the thick of it like a red flame, chanting something under her breath as men died around her. Cursing. Tyrion signaled to a knot of gold cloaks who actually recognized him. Stop! Stop fighting in King's name, he roared. But the battle fever had taken them. One of Stannis' knights lunged at Tyrion, and he barely jerked back in time. The knight's sword whistled by, grazing Tyrion's doublet. Bronn answered with a swift slash, dispatching the knight. The clang of steel was deafening. This was the worst possible outcome. Tyrion realized it with a sinking heart. His plan to negotiate peace, to avoid the destruction of the city, to prevent the slaughter, everything was crumbling in a single savage moment of violence. All because a bastard boy with Robert's face had chosen this day to reveal himself. Or perhaps that was no mere accident. Perhaps someone had arranged it, someone playing the deeper game. Petyr Baelish? Varys? The Red Woman's prophecy? Tyrion might never know. All he could see was that the realm's last hope for a bloodless solution was dying on the floor of the throne room amid a tangle of corpses. Then, with a thunderous crash, the great doors of the hall flew open yet again. More gold cloaks stormed in, led by Sir Jacelyn Bywater, trying to separate the combatants. But at that very moment, Stannis' men rallied, pushing forward. Shouts of alarm rang out. The big man himself tried to surge toward the throne, eyes burning with unstoppable determination. "Seize the throne," he cried. "For Robert. For the realm." "Lan." Tyrion, pushed to the side, watched in horror as the swirl of bodies converged, metal scraping metal, men screaming in pain. He saw a city's future draining away in spilled blood. The only question now was who would emerge from this fiasco with a sword in hand, and how many thousands would die before it was done. He had tried to negotiate peace before the Battle of the Blackwater. But it seemed the battle had come to them anyway, right here, in the heart of King's Landing. And Tyrion Lannister realized with a cold, sick clarity that sometimes, no matter how clever you were, no matter how desperately you sought a gentler path, war had a way of devouring the world in its jaws. He wondered, as Bronn pulled him bodily from the melee, if his father would be proud or furious at him for trying to parley. He wondered if Shay was safe, if the innocent small folk in the streets would be the next to suffer. He wondered how many bright illusions he had spun, only to see them unravel in moments. There was no easy answer. The only certainty was that the city was now a crucible of bloodshed, and that the illusions of peace were burning away faster than wildfire on the open sea. Chaos thundered in his ears. He could not see Joffrey anymore. He could not see Stannis. But he heard the savage clang of swords. Shouts and curses rang to the vaulted ceilings. The Iron Throne loomed above it all, mocking them with its twisted, melted blades. And Tyrion, stumbling away with his sellsword companion, could only think, this is how the game ends, with good intentions drowned in a tide of steel. And though the final outcome was not yet certain, though the day's victor remained unclear, Tyrion knew in his heart that the peace he had sought was as fleeting as a candle in the wind. Darkness had fallen on the realm, and the road to the future would be paved with bones and regrets. Perhaps if he had never answered Stannis' letter, never entertained the notion of negotiation, the city's doom might have come more swiftly by wildfire and rams. But at least it would have been decisive. Now, they stood on the brink of something far worse, a civil war within the very walls of King's Landing, a madness that would consume them all, Lannister and Baratheon alike. And in that uncertain twilight, Tyrion Lannister realized that the cost of peace might be higher than any battle, for the seeds of conflict had taken root in every corner of the land, and not even the cleverest dwarf in the Seven Kingdoms could uproot them in time. Tyrion saw the blade before he felt it, a blur of steel and the rasp of metal on metal. He threw up an arm to shield himself in a useless reflex. At the final instant, Bronn lunged between Tyrion and the attacker. Their swords clashed, echoing across the marble floor of the throne room. The fighting surged around them, a swirling mass of confusion and violence beneath the high vaulted ceiling. Shouts pounded in Tyrion's ears, cries for mercy, commands to stand down, the clang of steel on armor. He ducked beneath a broad sweep of a halberd and nearly stumbled over a fallen gold cloak. The man lay on his side, the light fading from his eyes, blood pooling across the tiles. Tyrion coughed at the iron tang in the air. He heard Joffrey bellowing furiously from somewhere on the dais, screaming for the king's guard to protect him. The last glimpse Tyrion had of the boy king was of him being whisked away through a side passage, his face twisted in shock and fury. Cersei's voice, shrill with terror, echoed above the chaos. Stanislaus' cries resounded, cutting through the din. Tyrion glimpsed the tall, gaunt man across the throne room, fighting through a press of gold cloaks that tried to pin him back. Stannis' sword flickered relentlessly, each strike powered by that unwavering, almost fanatical will. Smoke from overturned braziers began to curl in the air, filling everyone's lungs with a stinging reek. Tables were overturned, chairs splintered, and a few unfortunate courtiers still cowered in corners, shrieking in terror each time a blade came too close. Bronn caught Tyrion's arm. "We need to get out of here, or we'll both be corpses soon enough." Some part of Tyrion wanted to cry out that they had to end this madness, that someone had to restore order. But chaos spun too violently, unstoppable once unleashed. He saw a gold cloak raise his spear at Stannis' back. Sir Davos Seaworth leapt into the fray, short blade parrying the thrust at the last moment. No matter how bravely Stannis' men fought, they were outnumbered 2-1 in the thick of the throne room, though many of the gold cloaks had reeled back in confusion, uncertain if Joffrey was indeed a bastard, or whether they ought to be slaying the men who called him false king. Tyrion's mind raced. If Stannis died here, his soldiers outside the walls would doubtless storm King's Landing in retaliation. If Joffrey was harmed, or if the city's garrison believed the king had been murdered, wildfire could burn half of King's Landing to cinders. He wanted to shout at them all, to cry that it did not have to happen like this. But the thunderous clang of battle drowned every word. Already the throne room's polished floor had grown treacherous with spilled blood. The smell of it, pungent and metallic, pressed into his nose. A swirl of red robes loomed. Melisandre stood amid the frenzy like a statue of living flame, her eyes fixed on the dais. A swirl of gold cloaks closed in on her, swords drawn, but she only lifted her hands as though in prayer. She spoke a word Tyrion could not discern, and then the men rushed her. Her guard, a knight in flaming heart livery, slashed about in a brutal arc, felling two before a spear took him in the side. Melisandre sidestepped the dying knight, unblinking, her face like porcelain as the fight convulsed around her. Tyrion could only stare in grim fascination. No one was safe in this maelstrom. The Red Woman might be gutted any second, or she might conjure some horror that turned the tide. He had heard tales of shadowbirth and curses. Fear skittered along his spine. Bronn's iron grip on Tyrion's doublet yanked him away from a falling soldier. "My lord, we must move," he shouted, ducking another frantic swing from a gold cloak, who scarcely noticed who he attacked. "If you stay here, you'll wind up on the floor with the rest of them." Tyrion choked out a single nod. There would be no reason in this bedlam. He forced himself to focus, letting Bronn guide him through the thrashing bodies. A wave of hot panic washed over him when he realized he'd lost track of Gendry, that black-haired bastard whose presence had ignited the final spark of truth. No time to worry about that now. The boy might have been cut down, or fled, or... Tyrion's heart pounded. He heard men bellowing all around. The cut above his brow, he hadn't even realized he'd been grazed, sent warm rivulets of blood across his temple. He winced at the sting and kept moving. They skirted the far edge of the throne room, pressed close to the walls. In the center, the main knot of violence ground on with savage intensity, steel ringing. Tyrion glimpsed Sir Meryn Trant in white cloak and armor howling at his men to defend the king, though the king was long gone. A group of 4 Baratheon knights braced shields in a circle as they tried to hold off the gold cloaks pressing from 3 sides. Bodies littered the path behind them, a testament to how lethal that circle had been. Stannis' voice boomed, calling for them to push forward. Davos' voice cried for caution, for an organized withdrawal. Tyrion doubted either order would be heeded. This wasn't a battle. It was a riot with swords. They reached one of the tall columns that flanked the exit and slipped behind it. The corridor leading out was jammed with onlookers and lesser courtiers who had tried to flee at the first sign of trouble. Some lay trampled on the ground, others cowered under benches, shrieking. With Bronn forging ahead, Tyrion squeezed between a pair of terrified guards. He could taste bile in his throat. There was no time to bark orders, no time to coordinate. The city was about to tear itself in two from the inside out. At last, they emerged into a large hallway. Tyrion dragged in a gulp of air tainted by smoke and panic. Screams echoed from distant passages. Word had spread that fighting had broken out near the throne. A handful of gold cloaks rushed by in confusion. Tyrion seized one by the sleeve. "What news from the yard?" he demanded. The man looked wild-eyed. "They're fighting in the courtyard too. Some of Stannis' knights tried to open the gates. The rest of us are trying to hold them back. Men are saying the king's been slain or that the false king's in chains. I don't know." Naromoy. Before Tyrion could clarify, the man tore free and ran down the corridor. Bronn exhaled. If Stannis' men actually opened the gates, his army would be pouring inside, but that means the Goldcloaks are definitely engaged in a pitched fight. This is the siege come early. Tyrion's mind flitted like a trapped bird, searching for any path that might salvage the city. We need to find Joffrey and Cersei. The chain across the bay. If Stannis' men run back and signal their fleet, it could escalate. We have to maintain some semblance of control. Where would they have taken the king? Nin. Bronn glanced around warily, searching for more foes. The royal apartments? Maybe deeper into Maegor's holdfast? A secure place, I'd wager? Tyrion winced. Then, we make for Maegor's holdfast. They half walked, half ran through the corridors. All around, confusion reigned. Servants scrambled in terror. Highborn ladies wailed that marauders might soon burst in to violate them. A stray rumor that Stannis has conjured demons flitted from trembling tongues. Tyrion tried to clamp down on his own fear. The city was now a tinderbox, and any spark could set off greater carnage. They had to locate Joffrey, or at least the Queen Regent, before more monstrous decisions were made. They found a cluster of gold cloaks near a secured door. The men recognized Tyrion, saluting uncertainly, but they wore anxious faces. "The Queen's inside," said one in a shaking voice. "No one in or out." Tyrion approached with as much authority as he could muster, noticing that blood stained the man's surcoat. "Open for me. I am a hand of the king." "No." "Orders were to keep everyone out," the guard said, glancing at the thick door. Bronn barked. "That includes you if you don't open that damn door for us." Tyrion stepped forward, placing a hand on the guard's forearm. "Listen, I must speak with her grace, or this entire city will burn. Do you want to see your families turn to ash? Stannis' men, the gold cloaks, the lords, they're carving each other up. Let me in." The guard quavered, then banged on the door. After a tense wait, a muffled voice from within demanded to know who sought entrance. Tyrion pressed his mouth to the seam. "It's me, Tyrion the Hand. Open, in the name of the king." There was shuffling inside. At last, the lock creaked and the door swung open. Tyrion and Bronn stepped through, followed by two guards who held the threshold. Inside was a small antechamber, gold-cushioned chairs scattered about. Cersei stood in the center, disheveled, still clinging to an empty wine goblet. Her face was pale and drawn, her hair half fallen from its pins. Sir Meryn Trant was there, panting heavily, fresh blood spattering his Kingsguard whites. Cersei's eyes snapped to Tyrion. "What in seven hells is happening?" she hissed. "I lost Joffrey in the chaos. Someone pulled him away. Myrcella and Tommen are in the Tower of the Hand under guard. Did you see him? Did you see my son?" Tyrion's heart hammered. "He was swept through a side door with some of the Kingsguard. I don't know where they took him. Perhaps deeper into the Red Keep somewhere secure?" She exhaled, face twisting with fury and fear. "We cannot let him be harmed. Nor can we let Stannis walk free after this. He tried to take the throne right in front of us. Neneth Shartala. He tried to show the realm that Joffrey isn't Robert's son," Tyrion said, controlling a tremor in his voice. "And now, thanks to that black-haired bastard, half the city is ready to believe it. Men are fighting in the courtyard. We have to." Kill them, Cersei cut in, eyes wild. I want every one of Stannis' men put to death. I want him paraded through the streets in chains. Tyrion clenched his jaw. If you do that, the remainder of his forces outside the walls will attack. Then the city will tear itself apart from the inside. We still have a chain across the bay, we still have wildfire, but the devastation. Use the wildfire. Cersei spat. Burn their ships, burn them all. Let the sea swallow them. Bronn interjected. That's madness. We plan to use the chain if they sailed into the Blackwater, but if we unleash wildfire randomly. Cersei rounded on him, eyes blazing. I do not take counsel from a sellsword. I am the Queen Regent. If Stannis is at our gates or inside our walls, we must finish him. Tyrion pressed his hand to his temple. The pounding in his skull was as bad as any hangover. Sister, if we do as you say, we lose the city. Stannis' main force is outside, yes, but the men inside, there's a chance we can drive them back without wholesale slaughter. We just need Joffrey's presence. The gold cloaks might rally if they see him alive and commanding. Otherwise they'll panic or desert. She drew in a shaking breath. Yes, yes. Joffrey must be seen. Tyrion, I want you to find him. Bring him here or to the safest part of the keep. Tyrion's mouth twisted in frustration. I'll do what I can, but we must also coordinate the gold cloaks, or else we'll never reach him. He turned to Sir Meryn. Sir, you're sworn to guard the king's life. Where is he now? Meryn's voice shook. He was taken through the dais door by Sir Balon Swan and Sir Boros Blount. They wanted to get him away from the fighting. I tried to follow, but the chaos, some of Stannis' knights blocked my way. Then the queen fled, and I followed her grace. I have failed. Cersei let out a ragged sigh. You can atone by finding him now. Go. Go. Take these guards. Scour the keep. Keep him safe. She made a dismissive motion, and Sir Meryn hastened toward the door, the two gold cloaks behind him. They nodded to Tyrion as they left, apparently content that the hand was with the queen. Once they were gone, Tyrion regarded his sister more carefully. She had wiped a hand across her face, smudging her makeup. The lines of her features, drawn tight with dread, reminded him of how close they all stood to the precipice. If we find Joffrey, he said softly, the next step is to quell the fighting in the keep. Then we must come to terms with the forces outside. There will be no terms, she snapped, eyes flashing. You saw how he stormed into our throne room. Stannis will pay for this. The city will never bow to him. A hot retort rose to Tyrion's lips. He forced it down, pressing a hand against his side to steady himself. There was no use arguing with her in this state. Where is father's army? He asked instead, grim. Do we have any word on how many days until Tywin reaches King's Landing? She blinked at him, trying to collect herself. A raven came 2 days ago. No more. I only know he's on his way. The Tyrells might be marching as well. Maybe they'll arrive in time to crush Stannis. But if they do not, we must hold the city. No. Tyrion nodded curtly. Let me see if I can salvage anything from the courtyard. We need to re-establish control of the keep and ensure no one signals Stannis' fleet to sail in. If they come under the chain and we set it ablaze, gods help us all. The city will be drenched in blood and green fire. Cersei's voice quavered. Stop them, Tyrion. Stop them, or I swear I'll find a way to kill you along with all the rest. She turned away, lifting a fresh goblet to her lips. Where she had gotten more wine, Tyrion didn't know. But from the look in her eyes, the vintage was her only solace. Bronn nudged him gently, and Tyrion spun on his heel, leading the way out. In the corridor, the gold cloaks still stood guard at the door, perplexed by the new orders to let the queen's retinue come and go. Tyrion and Bronn descended a flight of stairs that led toward the yard. The air grew thicker with the echoes of distant fighting, muffled clamor floating through the stone. They emerged at a side doorway that overlooked a portion of the courtyard. A fight raged there with unabated savagery. Perhaps 36 men of Stannis' retinue remained, hemmed in on all sides by 2 or 3 times as many gold cloaks. Tyrion saw corpses strewn across the ground, blood smearing the dirt. He grimaced. This was no mere skirmish. It was a pitched battle, the knights in Baratheon's sigils bristling with grim determination, gold cloaks jabbing spears at them in a ring. Shouts and screams abounded. Across the yard, a pair of crossbowmen on the wall tried to pick off the knights, but the men of the Flaming Heart raised shields overhead. Tyrion raised his voice. Sir Jacelyn Bywater, are you here? But his words were lost to the roar of conflict. Bronn hefted his sword, but Tyrion grabbed his arm. Wait, we can't charge in or we'll be cut down or run through by our own men. He looked around, spotted a small stone staircase that led up the interior side of the battlements. Come on. We'll get a better view from above. Ascending the steps, they found themselves on a narrow walkway overlooking the courtyard. From this vantage, Tyrion could see the ring of gold cloaks pressing in on the Baratheon men. At the center of that ring stood Stannis himself. Tyrion's heart jolted. The man's helmet was off, his dark hair plastered to his head with sweat and blood. He was holding onto Davos Seaworth by the shoulder, as if trying to keep the Onion Knight from toppling. Davos bled profusely from a slash in his left arm. Stannis roared commands, though what they were, Tyrion could not make out. Tyrion turned to Bronn. We can't just let them slaughter each other. If we let Stannis die, his outside forces will assault the city. If we let him escape, the gold cloaks will feel betrayed. If we help him, we're traitors. If we help him, we might burn the city. There's no good choice. There's no good choice. Bronn's eyes glinted with that sellsword pragmatism. But we can at least stop these fools from swinging, if I can get them to hear me. Tyrion nodded, scanning the edge of the courtyard for any sign of a man he trusted. Finally, he spied Sir Jacelyn Bywater near a cluster of archers, shouting frantic orders. There, Bywater. If we can get him to stand the gold cloaks down, maybe we can talk sense. They hurried along the walkway, pushing past a few stunned guards. Smoke drifted from the direction of the throne room windows, where earlier braziers had been knocked over. Gods, let it not catch the curtains or tapestries, Tyrion prayed, or half the keep might burn. At last, they reached Bywater's position. The knight turned, startled, and snapped off a salute. My lord Hand, are you injured? Nakasakol. Tyrion shook his head, ignoring the throbbing cut on his scalp. Call the men back, Sir Jacelyn. We must end this fighting. Bywater looked torn. My lord, Stannis knights forced their way into the yard, trying to unbar the gates. We lost many good men and they refused to surrender. If we draw back, they'll open the gates for Stannis' host. The king commanded me to hold. Tyrion's chest tightened. The king is safe for the moment. I must speak with Stannis, or at least get him to stand down. If you kill him, his men outside will come in force. We'll be in a true siege. A dreadful one. Now one. Bywater's lips thinned. They've already struck down many of our own. We can't simply allow them free passage. Tyrion bit out a curse. The noise was deafening. Men shouting, weapons clashing. Then do this. Surround them, but hold your spears. No more attacking, not unless they resume. Let me speak from the walls. If they're cornered, they might listen. Or at least, they won't dare open the gates if we promise them parley again. Bronn, eyeing the melee, murmured, We don't have much time. Stannis and his men are about done in. Some gold cloaks on the opposite side look ready to rush in, cut them down from behind. Nay. Tyrion turned to Bywater. Signal them quickly. A horn, a shout, anything to halt the assault. Then I'll call out for a ceasefire. Bywater hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding resolutely. He stepped forward on the battlements, raised his sword and shouted to the gold cloaks below. Hold! Hold! In the name of the king! Cease! He repeated it 3 times. One of the archers blasted a horn. The immediate effect was confusion. A few gold cloaks drew back, uncertain if new orders had come. Others continued to jab spears at the Baratheon knights. Stannis' men, press too hard, seized the opening to hack at the nearest spearmen. The ring wavered. A fresh wave of blood splattered the ground. Tyrion felt despair knot in his gut. If it did not work. Bywater kept bellowing, voice ragged with desperation. All men of the city watch. Stand down! Stand down or face the king's justice! At last, enough gold cloaks heard that the impetus of their attack faltered. Stannis' circle, battered and encroached upon now, had a sliver of space. Bodies lay everywhere. A cough of wind carried the reek of gore and the moans of the dying. Tyrion swallowed hard. If only he could have prevented this from happening in the first place. Too late for regrets. Give me room, Tyrion told Bywater. The knight gestured to his men to step aside. Tyrion edged up to the walkway's edge. "Stannis Baratheon," he shouted, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Hear me. This slaughter serves no one. Stand your men down, and we shall speak. Do you hear?" "Nenin." He doubted Stannis could pick out his voice amidst the tumult, but Stannis' head jerked around, his hawk-like features scanning the walls. The man's right arm was slick with blood to the elbow, though Tyrion could not tell if it was his own or another's. Davos, clutching his wounded arm, also raised his head, face pale. Some of Stannis' knights surged forward again, but Stannis swung his sword in the air, calling them off. They drew back, forming a shaky line of defense. On the gold cloak side, confusion reigned, but the ring of spear points halted, men glancing up at the battlements, uncertain whether to continue. For a moment, a single, precarious moment, there was stillness. Tyrion's voice, high and clear, cut across that hush. "Stannis, we can still avoid a full massacre. Order your men to drop their blades, and I will ensure you are granted parley." A ragged cough from below, and then Stannis roared back. "You want me disarmed so you can murder me? You have no honor, imp. We tried a hearing, and your bastard king tried to have us all slain." Nay. Tyrion's throat was dry. He raised both hands, trying to show an empty, unarmed stance. "I swear on my life if you yield you will not be harmed until we speak. The alternative is more blood, more dead men on both sides and the gates locked against your army. Is that what you wish?" Stannis glowered, chest heaving. Even at a distance, Tyrion could sense the man's burning intensity. For a beat, no one moved. Then Sir Davos placed a trembling hand on Stannis' arm, murmuring something in his ear. Stannis tightened his jaw, looked at the ring of spears around him, and lifted his sword so all could see. Slowly, he let it tip forward, embedding its point in the bloody dirt. The knights surrounding him exchanged uneasy glances, but one by one they followed suit, lowering their weapons. A sigh of relief slipped from Tyrion's lips. "Thank the gods for small mercies." "Sir Jacelyn," he said, turning to Bywater, "order your men to pull back 5 paces, but keep them ringed. We can't let them run for the gates, but we must show we're willing to talk." Bywater complied, signaling with his sword. The gold cloaks withdrew just enough to ease the immediate threat of being stabbed. Tension radiated in the courtyard like heat off stone. Dozens of wounded men lay where they had fallen, groaning or silent forever. Tyrion's face felt clammy. An uncountable number of lives had been lost in mere minutes. He forced himself to focus on the next step. If he could keep the fighting from flaring again, maybe there was a shred of hope. He climbed down from the battlements, Bronn at his side, and made his way to the courtyard gate. 4 gold cloaks guarded it. Tyrion gave them a firm nod, then stepped through. Spearmen parted to allow him into the circle. He walked cautiously, boots tacking on slick ground. Stannis and Davos stood amid their battered knights, none of them looking willing to trust Tyrion an inch. Bronn lurked behind Tyrion, one hand on his sword hilt, watchful. Tyrion dipped his head, an awkward gesture, but he tried to show neither subservience nor disdain. "Lord Stannis, you and your men are now under the protection of the throne. If you come in good faith, we can attempt to salvage some manner of peace. Lay down your arms fully." He glanced pointedly at the circle of knights still clutching their swords by the hilts even if the tips were lowered. "You'll be escorted inside. No one will harm you while I remain Hand of the King." Stannis stared at him, sweat trickling down his temple. "We have your word, dwarf." Tyrion looked him dead in the eye. "My word, as a Lannister. I know that may mean little to you, but I'd sooner see an end to this bloodshed than more corpses piling up. Accept my parley, or fight on and die. Because you will die, my lord, if you persist now. Look around you. Now when am I see?" Stannis surveyed the courtyard. Many of his men were already dead. Others lay badly wounded, with no path to safety unless the gold cloaks allowed it. Beyond the gatehouse, the city was no doubt rallying to repel any further incursion. Tyrion could guess what the man was thinking, that if he died here, or was forced to surrender, then his outside forces might storm the walls anyway. Or they might lose heart. It was a gamble. At last, Stannis curled his lip in a bitter sneer. "Very well, impite. I will not see the rest of my men butchered for your boy king's vanity." But do not think I am your captive. My army is still outside your walls, and if any harm comes to me, they will raze this city to the ground, wildfire or no. Tyrion's relief was tempered by the knowledge that they were juggling wildfire in more ways than one. Your men will be escorted somewhere secure. They will be given medical attention if needed. Let us see if we can find a path forward that does not end in ruin. Stannis said nothing further. Davos inhaled shallowly, pressing a rag to the wound on his arm. Around them, the Baratheon knights began tossing their weapons aside. A few glared at Tyrion with a loathing that bordered on unearthly. When no one moved to stab them, the gold cloaks approached hesitantly, prodding them to stand in a group. Tyrion signaled for additional men to come from the keep to handle the wounded. It felt surreal to be giving orders in the middle of this scene of carnage. Bronn leaned in. You sure about letting them inside? They could break free or seize advantage. I'm sure of nothing, Tyrion said grimly, but it's better than letting them keep fighting. Or letting them roam free in the courtyard. He raised his voice to a lieutenant. Take them to the old dungeons below the keep, rooms large enough to hold them, and put a triple guard. Make sure no one mistreats them. We want them alive. The lieutenant blinked uncertainly. Even the Lord himself? Tyrion's gaze slid to Stannis. The man glowered, but he did not speak. No, Tyrion said. Lord Stannis shall be treated as befits his rank. Place him in the Tower of the Hand with a strong guard. And bring Maester Balabar or Maester Franken to tend the wounded among them. That includes Sir Davos. He hesitated. And Lady Melisandre, if she yet lives. Have you seen her? One of the gold cloaks spat. That red witch was not in the courtyard when we closed the ring. Either she fled or got cut down. Tyrion felt a ripple of worry. She was not a woman he liked to imagine scurrying into the depths of the keep. But if she was gone, perhaps that was one worry lifted. No sense dwelling on it now, with everything else unraveling. If she's missing, keep watch. She could stir trouble. For now, do your duty. Wah. None once. The guard saluted, barked orders, and the men set about disarming the battered knights. Stannis yielded his sword, muttering curses under his breath. Davos swayed from blood loss and had to be supported by 2 men. Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhaustion pulling at him. The courtyard was littered with the dead, the dying, the stink of spilt bowels. He had prevented further immediate killing, but the cost was horrendous. Bywater approached, wiping blood from his gauntlet. My lord Hand, shall I also lock up the wounded among them? Some are in dire need of attention. No, I wait. Tyrion nodded slowly. Yes, but let the maesters tend them. Set guards. Now we must find King Joffrey. We need him to make a public address, something to keep the gold cloaks from fracturing, to keep the city from open revolt. The rumor that he's dead or a bastard can't be left to fester. Bywater hesitated. My lord, half the city believes it already. This hearing fiasco, the bastard boy, it's all people are speaking of. But I'll do as you command. Let me know how to help. Tyrion suppressed a weary sigh. Help by re-establishing order. If any of Stannis' men remain in the keep, disarm them and offer them the same terms. Surrender or face lethal force. But no random slaughters, understood? Nah. Bywater inclined his head. Understood. He marched off to carry out his orders, rallying surviving gold cloaks and reorganizing them. Tyrion scanned the scene for Bronn, who had wandered off a short distance. He found the sellsword kneeling over a dying gold cloak, checking the man's pockets for coin. The man was barely conscious. Tyrion frowned disapprovingly. Really, Bronn? Bronn shrugged. The dead have no need for gold. The living do. He stood, tossing Tyrion a sardonic grin. Now what? Tyrion turned his gaze to the keep's towering walls. We find Joffrey. Then we figure out how to keep the city from devouring itself. Because Stannis' main host is still out there, no doubt about to learn their lord is taken captive. Bronn snorted. Captive or a guest? The difference might matter. Pray that nuance is enough, Tyrion said under his breath. They moved back inside, stepping over the threshold with hearts still pounding. The corridors in this part of the keep were quieter, though a few battered gold cloaks carried wounded men or slid corpses aside. Tyrion's eyes flicked along the walls, half expecting to see Melisandre lurking in the shadows with some unnatural terror. But the gloom held only exhausted guards and scattered debris. They paused at an intersection. One corridor led toward the royal apartments, the other toward the Tower of the Hand and the safer compartments. Tyrion guessed Joffrey might have been taken to whichever was closer, so likely the Tower of the Hand as that was well fortified. "Let's try the tower," he told Bronn. As they picked their way along the corridor, the distant ring of metal told them skirmishes still flared here and there, pockets of confusion not yet quelled by Blackwater. Tyrion's heart twisted painfully with each new echo of violence, knowing more men died needlessly. They hurried faster. They found the tower steps guarded by 4 gold cloaks. Tyrion recognized the one at the front, a man named Ryman, broad-faced, once a butcher's son. He stiffened to attention. "My Lord Hand. The king is inside. Sir Boros brought him here." A wave of relief swept Tyrion. "Is he well?" Ryman chewed his lip. "He's furious, but unhurt. The Queen's sworn me to keep him locked in for safety until things calm down." Tyrion nodded, pushing past him. "We have to speak with him now." They climbed the curving steps and reached a thick wooden door. Bronn rapped on it, and a moment later a pale steward cracked it open. Tyrion slipped inside. It was a modest receiving chamber that connected to more private rooms beyond. There stood Joffrey, pacing in front of the hearth, face red, crown askew on his golden curls. Sir Boros Blount hovered at his side, eyeing the door warily. "Uncle." Joffrey spat, voice still shaking with residual terror or fury. "What is the meaning of this? Those traitors barged into my throne room. I want their heads on pikes." Tyrion braced himself. "We have subdued Stannis and his surviving men. He's in custody." Joffrey's eyes lit with a sadistic glee for an instant. "Good. Execute him at once. Let his men watch." Tyrion felt the words like a blow. "Your Grace, that would be the worst possible course of action. His army is outside the walls, tens of thousands. If you kill him, they will assault King's Landing, will be forced to use wildfire, and the city might burn to its very foundations. Thousands upon thousands would die." Joffrey's mouth twisted. "So what? They rose against me, they die." Tyrion forced calm. "They rose for Stannis because they believe you are not Robert's true son. The hearing was inconclusive until that bastard boy arrived. Your claim is in doubt across the city, and more than half the gold cloaks might desert if they truly believe you are a false king. If you slaughter Stannis now, you feed the rumor that you're desperate to hide the truth." "Nay." Joffrey glowered. He cast a glance at Sir Boros, who nodded with an obsequious dip of the chin. "The boy was a liar, a filthy black-haired liar. My father was King Robert. Everyone knows that." Tyrion resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "Yes, of course, Your Grace. But it's not enough to simply declare it. The realm is in chaos. If we want to maintain your reign, we must handle this carefully. We have Stannis in captivity. That's leverage. His men outside the walls don't yet know what's happened. We might still avert a full-scale siege if we treat with them again." "One thoughts right." Joffrey's voice cracked with fury. "I want no more treating. I want them destroyed. Every last one. They marched on my city. They drew steel in my throne room. They..." He stopped, trembling, his eyes shining with a mixture of fear and anger. "They humiliated me before the court, before the entire city." Tyrion recognized the boy's bruised pride. He tried a gentler tone. "Your Grace, humiliating them in return might be done in many ways, but we must be wise. Your mother agrees that we cannot let Stannis' men storm the city. Remember, your grandfather's army is on the way. If we can hold the city with minimal bloodshed until Lord Tywin arrives, we can crush Stannis' claim properly." Joffrey frowned. He seemed to weigh that, sullen. "Then what do I do now?" Tyrion took a measured breath. "Now you must show yourself to the people. Assure them you still rule, that you're alive and unhurt. Make it clear that the fight is over, for now, and that you will punish only those who continue to bear arms against you. If you do that, many in the gold cloaks will remain loyal. The small folk who fear more violence might calm themselves. And perhaps if your lords and knights see you looking strong, they'll gather to defend the walls should Stannis' outside forces attempt to storm us after all. They see Tally. The boy's face tightened. I hate letting them think I'm merciful. They'll mock me. Tyrion's lips pressed thin. Mercy isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the best weapon you have when the city stands on the edge of ruin. He gave Joffrey a pointed look. Come, your grace. Step outside. Let them see you. Joffrey hesitated, glancing at Sir Boros and then at the door. If they try to kill me? That's why we have the Kingsguard, Tyrion said smoothly. And the gold cloaks. You'll be well protected. For a long moment, Joffrey's face twitched with indecision. Then he tugged at his crown, straightening it. Fine, you will announce me uncle. Tyrion bowed. As you wish. They left the Tower of the Hand under heavy guard. Gold cloaks lined the steps, spears in hand, while Sir Boros hovered protectively near Joffrey, and Bronn held a watchful stance by Tyrion. In the courtyard, the aftermath of the bloody battle still coated the ground, but most of the bodies were being gathered or carried off by a cadre of reluctant attendants. The ring of Stannis' surviving men was gone. Those who weren't dead or gravely wounded had been escorted deeper into the dungeons or to guarded apartments. A hush fell when people glimpsed Joffrey's approach. Word spread in ripples. The king is here. The king is alive. Tyrion swallowed at the sight of so much gore. He wondered if the boy had the stomach for it. Joffrey's lips parted, and he visibly blanched. Tyrion quietly positioned himself in front of Joffrey, hoping to block some of the carnage from his direct line of sight. A group of gold cloaks formed a half-circle in front of them, clearing a space. Tyrion raised his hands, shouting for attention. Men of the City Watch. Good folk of King's Landing. See your king, Joffrey Baratheon, first of his name. Wah. A wavering hush spread as more men turned from their tasks to look. Tyrion glanced at Joffrey, who inhaled shakily and stepped forward. He lifted his chin, trying to appear regal, though Tyrion could see his hands trembling at his sides. Hear me. Joffrey called, voice squeaking a little before he steadied it. I am your king. Stannis Baratheon attempted treason and he failed. He is captured. Those of his men who laid down arms are taken prisoner. Those who still resist face death. I command the gold cloaks to restore order in the keep and the city. No harm will come to any man who lays down his sword and swears loyalty to me. He paused, swallowing. Tyrion stepped up to speak in a voice that carried further. You have heard your king's decree. The streets shall be cleared of fighting. Any who attempt to proclaim Stannis a rightful king shall face the crown's justice. Let the maesters tend the wounded, and let the bodies of the dead be identified if possible, so their families can mourn. In the name of King Joffrey, obey. One of the officers in the courtyard, a tall man with a badly bruised cheek, raised his voice hesitantly. My Lord Hand, what of the rest of Stannis' army outside the gates? Do we prepare for a siege? Tyrion's mind churned. If Stannis' army attempts an assault, we will defend the city, but we will also attempt to treat with them. Send forth a rider bearing news that Stannis has been detained unharmed. Any who choose to lay down arms will be spared. A ripple of unease moved through the watchers. Some gold cloaks exchanged looks. Tyrion suspected they questioned whether Joffrey's talk of sparing enemies was a bluff, or if this truly was the new policy. Joffrey, mouth tight, barked, Obey me, or answer with your life, that is all. Then he turned abruptly and stalked back toward the steps, leaving Tyrion behind to handle the fallout. Tyrion forced a rigid smile. Continue your tasks, he said. We must have calm if we're to avoid further bloodshed. He followed Joffrey, catching up with him at the top of the steps. Sir Boros stood like a scowling statue. There, Joffrey muttered bitterly. I've shown them I'm not afraid, but I don't want them thinking they can get away with raising arms against me. Tyrion nodded, voice low. They saw you, and that's vital for holding their loyalty. As soon as we can, we'll send word to Stannis' camp, but you must resist the urge to kill him until we see if they'll stand down. If they don't, we might have no choice but to fight, and you know what that could cost us. Joffrey's gaze skittered to the courtyard. He looked unsettled by the blood on the ground. I hate all of this. Then, he hardened. Find that turn. but only so long as they obey. If the city or the gold cloaks falter again, I'll unleash the wildfire. Tyrion's heart sank. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. They returned inside, this time to the royal apartments. Cersei was already there, pacing like a caged animal. She rushed to Joffrey, hugging him fiercely. "My sweet boy," she said tremulously, though Joffrey squirmed away after a moment. "I'm fine, mother," he said, sounding almost embarrassed. Then he scowled. "We have Stannis in custody. The imp says we should keep him alive to bargain with his army. Is that what you want?" Her eyes flicked to Tyrion. "If it prevents the city from burning, yes. But do not trust the man. He's cunning. He'll remain under heavy guard," Tyrion said. "No one will simply let him wander the keep, but we must ensure he isn't tortured or executed in haste. We'll treat with his men. If they stand down, we avoid a drawn-out siege. If they persist, we'll have more draconian measures at our disposal." She pursed her lips. "It seems you have a plan. Good. Execute it swiftly." Tyrion almost laughed at the irony of her phrasing. Instead, he gave her a stiff bow. "I shall. But your grace, there's also the matter of the rumor now sweeping the city, that Joffrey is not Robert's true son. We must address that." "Lund." Joffrey let out an angry sputter. "I've addressed it. I called them all liars." Cersei's voice dropped to a fierce whisper. "That black-haired bastard. He's the one. If he still lives, have him found and killed." Tyrion hesitated. "I don't know where he is. The last I saw, he was fleeing the throne room. With the city in turmoil, he might have slipped away or been killed in the melee. Even so, the damage is done. We can't unmake the gossip. People saw him, heard him claim to be Robert's son." "Anatrabas." Cersei's grip tightened on her empty goblet. "Then we must reinforce the official narrative. Pycelle will produce more documents. We will find lords and ladies who will swear Robert fathered Joffrey. We'll punish any who say otherwise." Tyrion nodded wearily. "Yes, a thorough suppression might at least keep the city from unraveling. But it won't convince men of the realm who have eyes to see. Our best hope is that Tywin arrives soon to help quell any further insurrection. Until then, we maintain order and keep our swords pointed outward." Cersei nodded once, curtly. "Do what you must." Tyrion took his leave. He had no time for rest. The city boiled with tension that might erupt at any moment. He and Bronn retreated to Tyrion's Solar, where 100 matters demanded attention. Varys soon arrived with news of the throne room fiasco. Tyrion suspected he'd been somewhere in the Red Keep's labyrinth during the worst of it. The eunuch looked pale, though his demeanor remained measured. "How many dead, my lord?" he asked softly, hands folded. Tyrion sank into a chair. "Scores in the throne room and courtyard, plus more skirmishes throughout the keep. It could climb to over 100, perhaps more by the time we count the wounded who succumb." Varys winced. "All in a single day, a single hour. The realm will not soon forget it." Tyrion passed a hand across his eyes. "Nor will I. The question is, can we salvage something from this ruin?" Varys pursed his lips. "If we can bring Stannis' men outside the walls to heal, yes. But rumor says Melisandre escaped the throne room. She was sighted in the corridors, accompanied by 2 of Stannis' knights, then vanished. If she is still within the city, she might sow more discord, or attempt to free Stannis." Tyrion grimaced. "We'll place a bounty on her capture, but quietly. Spread the word among the gold cloaks, but not the small folk. No need to incite a witch hunt that kills any red-haired woman in sight." Varys inclined his head. "As you say. And what of the boy Gendry? I hear he vanished in the chaos as well." Tyrion tapped his fingers on the arm of his chair. "A bigger problem, or a smaller one? If he's roving the streets shouting that he's Robert's trueborn, he's a threat. If he's gone to ground, maybe no one will hear. But Cersei wants him dead if found. If you have any of your little birds who can sniff him out, do so. But quietly. If we start a manhunt, it'll only confirm that we fear him." "Netgal." Varys's brows arched. "Understood. I'll dispatch inquiries." They worked late into the night, drafting letters to send beyond the walls. One was to be delivered by a rider under a flag of truce, addressed to the commanders of Stannis' outside forces, informing them that Stannis Baratheon lived, was in royal custody, and that if they laid down arms, no harm would come to him. If they persisted, the king would have no choice but to punish both them and Stannis. It was a gamble. Tyrion doubted the commanders would simply abandon their lord, but he hoped a fraction might lose heart, perhaps enough to weaken any siege. By the next morning, a stifling hush had settled over the Red Keep. Bodies were still being carted away, and the corridors stank of decay and leftover fear. Joffrey sulked in his chambers, entertaining only a handful of visitors. Cersei demanded frequent updates. The gold cloaks patrolled in doubled numbers. Every corner of the keep felt coiled tight, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. Tyrion roused himself from an uneasy sleep, having dozed off hunched over his writing table. Bronn shook his shoulder gently. "There's a messenger here from the camp outside. Says he bears word from one of Stannis' lords. Neon and Andre." Blinking bleary eyes, Tyrion nodded, rising with a groan. His neck felt as though it had been hammered upon. He splashed water on his face and instructed the messenger to be brought in. Moments later, a lanky man in battered armor entered, kneeling with visible reluctance. "Rise," Tyrion said wearily. "Speak. Which lord do you serve?" "I serve Lord Alester Florent, who commands a portion of Stannis' host," said the man. "He sends me to learn if Lord Stannis truly lives, and in what state." "He does live," Tyrion confirmed. "He was wounded but not severely. We have not thrown him in a dungeon, though we keep him under guard. He has been offered a chance to negotiate. Does Lord Florent speak for Stannis' entire force?" The messenger shifted. "Well, the host has no single leader in his absence. Some follow Lord Florent, some follow Lord Valerian, others Sir Roland Storm, or the lords sworn to Storm's End. But many question the rumors that King Joffrey is not the rightful son of King Robert. Some wonder if this entire matter was a trick. They fear traps. They want to know if we can retrieve Lord Stannis or if we must assault the city." "No, Mace." Tyrion's heart sank. The man's words confirmed that Stannis' army was fractious but still dangerous. "Tell them that if they attack, Lord Stannis' life will be forfeit, an outcome we do not desire. Tell them that if a delegation of lords wishes to come under safe conduct, I will arrange for them to see Stannis alive with their own eyes. Then we might reach a settlement. But if they threaten the city, we will respond in force. Inform your lords of that plainly." The messenger bowed stiffly. "I will. But they may demand to speak to Lord Stannis himself." "Unless..." Tyrion weighed the risk. "I will consider it if they come peacefully. You have my word." He sent the man off with that message, hoping it would buy them more time. As soon as the messenger left, Tyrion set about conferring with Varys, Blackwater, and any others who might help him craft a stable plan. A delegation from the enemy camp could be an opportunity to defuse the crisis, or a Trojan horse for infiltration. They had to be very careful. If the delegation came and they let them see Stannis, perhaps that would quell the clamor for an immediate attack. Or perhaps it would provoke more cunning attempts to free him. Meanwhile, the city itself was on edge. Small folk heard that battle had broken out in the throne room, that the real king had been captured, or that King Joffrey had proven his legitimacy by fighting off Stannis. Wild rumors swirled. The markets remained half empty, many shops shuttered. Commoners cowered in their homes or fled for the countryside, although that offered no real safety. The gold cloaks tried to keep order, but tensions erupted in taverns and alleyways. More than once, Tyrion heard of brawls ignited by Joffrey's "a bastard" or "no, you're the bastard" taunts. On the second day after the throne room chaos, 4 lords under a white flag approached the city gates, seeking audience. Tyrion had them admitted under a heavy escort. Lord Alester Florent led them, tall and dignified, though fear tightened his features. With him came Lord Valerion, known for a proud lineage from Driftmark, along with Sir Gilbert Faring and a gaunt knight called Sir Axel. Tyrion received them in the great hall, if not the throne room. That chamber still reeked of blood, and the memory of the slaughter was too fresh. They sat at a large table in the presence of a strong contingent of gold cloaks, with Tyrion, Varys, and a few members of the small council. Joffrey did not attend, claiming he would not parley with traitors. Tyrion suspected the boy was still shaken. Alester Florent cleared his throat. "We come in peace," seeking proof that Lord Stannis is indeed alive. Our men question the city's claims after rumors of a great melee in the throne room. My side. Tyrion nodded to Bronn, who opened a side door. Guarded by 4 gold cloaks, Stannis Baratheon entered, wrists unbound but flanked closely. He wore a simple tunic, dried blood stiff on one sleeve. He looked at the lords with a mixture of shame and fury. "Behold," Tyrion said quietly. "He is alive." The visitors rose, expressions a mix of relief and confusion. Lord Florent hurried forward. "Your Grace," he said, beginning to kneel before Stannis. Stannis made a curt gesture, half livid. "Don't kneel to me when I am captive. These Lannisters bring me here like a prop." Tyrion felt a spike of exasperation. "You said you wished your men to see you were well, Lord Stannis. Here is the opportunity. Speak to them. If you tell them to assault the city, they risk your life. That is a fact. But if you command them to stand down, perhaps we can find a solution." Stannis' gaze burned. He looked at Florent, then Valerian. "Is the camp ready? You have the siege towers, the rams. Have you the means to storm these walls if the city will not yield?" Lord Valerian blinked uneasily. "Yes, Your Grace, but the chain across the bay, the wildfire, it could be disastrous." Stannis turned on Tyrion. "Let me leave in peace, and I'll call off the army. Let me take the throne I am owed, or let me depart to gather my strength. That is my demand." Tyrion's expression hardened. "Demands? You are in no position to demand anything. You forced a confrontation in the heart of the city, and you lost. Now we must consider the future. King Joffrey," he almost tripped over the words, "has decreed you shall live as our guest until he has assured your men will stand down and accept his rule." Stannis gave a bark of bitter laughter. "They will never accept the rule of an incest-born pretender." Florent shifted nervously. "My lord, Your Grace, the men are uneasy. Many are not as certain as you. They saw the hearing unravel. Some think Joffrey might indeed be Robert's son. Others hold to your cause, but they fear the city's defenses. Should we truly hurl ourselves at these walls and watch thousands die?" He glanced at Tyrion. "My Lord Hand, if there is some compromise—" "Compromise?" Stannis snarled. "Don't speak of compromise. The rightful throne is not subject to compromise." Tyrion kept his composure. "There is little room for negotiation on your claim to the throne, my lord. But there might be leniency shown to your lords and knights if they disband. If they swear no further hostility, they may keep their lands. Even you could be granted your freedom on certain conditions." Stannis' eyes flashed, but Lord Valerian seized the moment to speak. "This city is well fortified, and we have not the provisions for a long siege. Many men might die of hunger or disease before we breach the walls." Stannis leveled a withering glare at him. "So you yield to the Lannisters out of fear? Coward!" Alester Florent spread his hands. "Not fear, my Lord King. Realism. We must weigh the cost. Our men are loyal, but they question if we can truly place you on the throne through direct assault. Tywin Lannister marches and the Tyrells might join him. If that happens, we'll be crushed between them and the city." An uneasy silence fell. Tyrion found himself oddly grateful for the pragmatic Florent, who was effectively making his own arguments for him. He decided to press the advantage. "Perhaps, my lords, you can see reason. A siege would be catastrophic for both sides, especially for the small folk. I propose you return to camp and persuade those loyal to Stannis to stand down. If they do, King Joffrey will, in his infinite wisdom, grant them pardon, unless they have committed specific acts of treason beyond raising arms. As for Lord Stannis, we will hold him here in the Red Keep until we receive word from King Joffrey's allies that the realm is secured." Stannis' face twisted. "I'll not be your hostage for all time." Tyrion eyed him steadily. "If your men persist in attacking, we'll have no choice but to defend the city, and you'll be the first to fall, my lord." Florent swallowed. "Your Grace, please, if you can find it in you to see the sense." Stannis wrenched away. "Sense? The only sense is that I was betrayed by the Red Keep's illusions. I listened to the MPS talk of a hearing. I allowed myself to be lulled by the notion that justice might be served by words. But this farce has proven otherwise. If the men rally, if they have the courage, they can bring these walls down. Now Liue. Lord Valerian's face paled. They might, but only at dreadful cost. We'd face wildfire. The city's defenders are numerous. The Tyrells or Lord Tywin could arrive. We'd be crushed. Stannis refused to meet his lord's eyes, the muscle in his jaw twitching. Tyrion could almost see the conflict within him, the unbending sense of right pitted against the knowledge that continuing would bury thousands of corpses on both sides. The tension stretched taut. At last, Stannis turned to Florent and Valerion. Return to the camp. Tell them the truth. I am held but alive, and I will not yield. If they have the spine to storm this city and liberate me, they may do so. If they shrink from that, then they deserve the Lannisters as masters. Florent paled. Your Grace. Stannis cut him off. Enough. Go. Tyrion exhaled, dismayed. He'd hoped Stannis might say something to defuse the confrontation, but the man's pride blazed. Lord Florent looked helpless. Tyrion cleared his throat. My lords, you have heard your liege, but I urge you to see reason for the sake of your men. War can be ended with quill and ink as well as swords. If you choose to stand down, King Joffrey's terms of leniency still stand. Florent bowed stiffly, exchanging a glance with Valerion. Then they turned to Stannis and bowed more deeply. We shall deliver your words, your grace. Stannis stared at them, face hard as stone. Do as you will. The four men departed, escorted out of the keep. Tyrion rubbed his temples. Stannis was unyielding, determined to see Joffrey fall even if it meant his own men would have to assault the city's formidable defenses. That made a negotiated peace very difficult. And yet the lords in Stannis' camp might decide to defy him if they believed continuing the siege was hopeless. Was that possible? Could Stannis' own supporters break ranks to avoid certain doom? Tyrion watched as the guards led Stannis away, presumably back to the tower room, or a secure suite. The Baratheon lord's eyes flicked over Tyrion with unconcealed loathing. Tyrion felt no triumph, only weariness. If the camp refused to stand down, they were trapped in the same dire scenario as before. A siege, a chain, wildfire, and countless lives in the balance. That evening, Tyrion joined Joffrey, Cersei, and a handful of key courtiers to discuss the negotiations. The Queen Regent had locked the doors, letting only Tyrion, Varys, Pycelle, and a single gold cloak inside. They gathered around a table in Cersei's private solar, a room of marble floors and walls hung with golden drapes. Cersei poured herself wine in a trembling hand. Joffrey sat in a cushioned chair by the window, fidgeting with a jeweled dagger. Tyrion stood, arms folded. Varys began. The news from Lord Florent's visit. The camp is divided. Some lords realize the futility of a full assault, but others burn with zeal for Stannis' cause. We cannot be certain whether they'll splinter or unify. Pycelle coughed, beard quivering. If they unify and attempt to storm the walls, the city might hold. Our supplies are not ample, but enough for a short siege. Still, if Tywin arrives soon, we might break them from the rear. Nice. Joffrey cut in petulantly. If they do come, I want them burned with wildfire. That will show them my power. Cersei nodded vigorously. Yes, let them see the might of the crown. Tyrion inhaled slowly. Your Grace, I advise caution. Wildfire is unpredictable. If we time the chain and the fire well, we might do horrific damage to their fleet, should it try the bay. But if the wind changes, or if they assault the land gates instead, the conflagration could spill into the city. Joffrey stared sullenly out the window. So we do nothing until they knock on our gates. We continue to watch and prepare, Tyrion said. Sir Jacelyn Bywater is reinforcing the walls. The city watch is fanning out to quell any further unrest in the streets. We have enough archers and catapults to repel a direct assault for a time. Meanwhile, we pray that some of Stannis' lords realize the hopelessness of attacking and decide to withdraw. We just might avoid a full battle. Cersei sipped her wine. And if they do not? Tyrion looked at her with a weary gaze. Then war resumes in earnest. She drummed her fingers on the table. We cannot endure a drawn-out siege. The small folk will starve. Riots will break out. If the city turns against us, we could be overwhelmed from within. Tyrion nodded. Precisely. That is why I sought to negotiate from the start, but we are past that now. Stannis will not budge. He's a prisoner in our keep, fueling the anger of his men. Joffrey gave a grim chuckle. Good, let them be angry. They'll die angry when they see their precious lord executed. Tyrion stiffened. Not yet, your grace. We still need him as leverage. Joffrey glared at him, but said nothing more. Varys cleared his throat delicately. On another matter, my lord. Rumors abound that Gendry was seen near Flea Bottom after escaping the keep, but then vanished. My little birds suspect he may have hidden in a blacksmith's den or fled by boat across the river. Cersei swore under her breath. He must be found and silenced. If he roams free, he can fan the flames of this incest rumor. Tyrion had dreaded this. We do not have the resources for a massive manhunt. The city is too large, and we're stretched thin. But I'll see if we can post watchers at the gates, the docks. We might intercept him. Nice. She flung her goblet aside, wine splashing across the marble. Do it. If the city learns that Robert had a living son, it might give them a new figurehead. That is the last thing we need. Tyrion suppressed a sigh. The city was already a tinderbox. Another spark could indeed set it ablaze. It shall be done. They spoke late into the night, repeating the same fears and arguments in circles. By the time Tyrion dragged himself to bed, the first pale light of dawn glimmered at the windows. He collapsed onto the mattress, numb with exhaustion. He dreamed of the throne room and its bloody floor, of a black-haired boy forging a sword in wildfire flames. Morning brought more tidings. A raven from Harrenhal indicated Tywin's host was still at least a week's march away. Perhaps longer, supply lines slowed them. Margaery Tyrell remained in the city, but her family's forces had not yet committed to riding north. Tyrion arranged a quick visit to Margaery, curious about House Tyrell's stance. She was housed in a comfortable suite, chaperoned by one of her ladies. Margaery Tyrell sat in a sunlit corner, embroidering. She rose gracefully when Tyrion entered. "My Lord Hand," she said, a gentle smile on her face. "How may I assist you?" Tyrion inclined his head. "My lady, I come to ask if you have word from your family. With Stannis' forces outside the city, we wonder if Highgarden might soon lend arms to King Joffrey." Margaery set aside her embroidery. "I am not in direct contact with my Lord Father. My grandmother, the Lady Olenna, is rumored to be urging caution. The Reach has no wish to spill blood needlessly. We expected to align with the crown to ensure stability, but with all these rumors, many in the Reach wonder if they should wait to see who truly holds the throne." Tyrion masked his irritation. "Joffrey is the rightful king, and your betrothal stands. I hope your house will uphold the arrangement." She demurred with a lovely, practiced courtesy. "I stand ready to be Joffrey's queen, but I pray for peace. The small folk have suffered enough." Her dark eyes flicked over Tyrion with a hint of shrewdness. "Perhaps you, my lord, can still find a way to avoid a siege?" Tyrion felt a pang. "I am trying, but Stannis is unmovable. I only hope that the lords in his camp see the futility. If House Tyrell declared support for Joffrey outright and marched, that might tip the scales further." She inclined her head. "I cannot speak for them. I can only encourage you to do all you can to spare the city more violence." He understood. She was saying, in her polite way, that the Tyrells would not commit until they were certain. He thanked her for her time and departed, frustration weighing him. He had no illusions about Margaery's gentle manner. The Tyrells were calculating, waiting to see how the tide turned. If House Tyrell joined them soon, Stannis' forces would be pinned between Tywin and the Tyrell host. The war would end quickly. But that would require a final savage blow, and Tyrion still feared the costs of that. Over the next few days, a fragile stalemate reigned. The city's gates remained barred. Stannis' army, half of it at least, erected tents and siege engines in a ring around the landward approach, while some of his ships lurked off the coast, hesitant to test the chain. The potential for a massive assault weighed on every inhabitant of King's Landing. A hush of dread settled in the streets, broken only by occasional bursts of looting or violence. The Gold Cloaks tried to maintain order, but fear gnawed at morale. Inside the Red Keep, Stannis was confined to a secure suite. The door was kept locked from the outside, with 4 guards posted at all times. Melisandre remained elusive. No confirmed sightings, Davos Seaworth recovered from his wound, also kept under watch. He had asked more than once for a chance to speak with his sons or his men, but the city forbade it. Tyrion waded through endless details, rationing the city's grain, reorganizing guard rotations, sending out ravens begging Tywin to hasten. Meanwhile, the lords outside, led by Florent, had not launched an assault, nor had they withdrawn. They seemed paralyzed, waiting for something. Tyrion guessed they were waiting for Tywin or for Melisandre's next move. On the 5th evening of the stalemate, Tyrion stood atop the battlements, overlooking Blackwater Bay. The sun set in a blaze of red, the water reflecting a crimson glow. If Stannis' ships tried to force the harbor, the chain and wildfire would greet them. Tyrion's heart felt cold. He did not relish the thought of men screaming in green flames, the bay turning into a floating charnel house. But the alternative was allowing them to land uncontested. He exhaled, the wind tangling his hair. Bronn joined him. "Quiet out there," the sellsword observed, nodding to the distant flickers of campfires by the coastline. "Too quiet." Tyrion's mouth twitched. "A siege has many quiet nights and some that explode into blood. We can only hope they remain hesitant until help arrives." Bronn gave a half-smile. "You think your father will be the city's savior?" Tyrion's gaze drifted. "He might break Stannis' army. But at what cost? And what about the rumor of Joffrey's parentage? Even if we hold the throne, the seeds of doubt will never vanish. We could face rebellion again and again. The Tyrell alliance might help, or might not." "The Eladoners," Bronn shrugged. "That's politics. All that matters is who sits the throne after the heads have rolled." Tyrion sighed, gazing at the murky waters. "You're right. It's all that's ever mattered, I suppose." They descended the stairs into the courtyard, parted ways as Tyrion headed to his solar. Halfway there, a gold cloak ran up, breathless. "My Lord Hand, there's trouble in the southern corridors. Some men were found strangled, and a red-robed woman was seen lurking near the corner tower." Tyrion's blood went cold. "Melisandre?" The guard nodded, wide-eyed. "We think so. She disappeared into the darkness. The men who were found dead, their throats were black as if burned from the inside." Tyrion tried to steady himself. If she truly possessed dark powers, or even if she was just cunning enough to murder them quietly, she might be making a move to free Stannis. "Summon more guards. Check on Stannis this instant. Secure the Tower of the Hand." The gold cloak sprinted off. Tyrion broke into as much of a run as his short legs allowed, heart pounding. He reached the stairwell leading to Stannis' quarters. Guards milled about in confusion, but the door was still locked. Tyrion found the key-bearer, an older man named Renfer, who stammered that the lock was undisturbed. Inside, shouts rang out. They flung open the door. A swirl of confusion. One of the guards inside was on his knees, face blue, clawing at his throat. Another guard rushed forward. Davos Seaworth stood near the window, arms raised in alarm, shouting, "I didn't touch them, I swear!" No sign of Melisandre. Stannis was pinned in place by two more guards who had swords half drawn, uncertain who to fight. Tyrion rushed in. "What happened?" The guard on his knees collapsed, choking out frothy spittle, eyes rolling back. Tyrion felt a surge of horror. The man died, convulsing, black lines creeping across his lips. The remaining guards pressed themselves against the wall, terror in their eyes. Davos looked frantic. "A shadow, some darkness, I don't know." The candle flickered, the door was locked, then the guard started choking. "I tried to help, but I couldn't." Tyrion's stomach roiled. He recalled the stories of a shadow assassin at Renly's camp. Could Melisandre have conjured something again? He stared at Stannis, who scowled but seemed equally shocked. "You had no hand in this?" Stannis spat. "If I could conjure shadows, I'd have done it long ago to kill you all and free myself." He glared at Davos. "The Red Woman is behind this. She acts of her own will." Tyrion realized that if Melisandre was indeed prowling the castle, they were all in grave danger. "Guards, keep watch. Move Stannis to a different chamber if we must. Double the guard. No one enters or leaves but with my personal permission." He turned on Davos Dyko. "You say you saw a shadow? Did it have a shape, a face?" Davos' face was ashen. "Only that it was tall and blacker than pitch, then it vanished as soon as the guard collapsed. I I can't explain it. Tyrion felt sweat bead at his brow. We must find her. She might be hiding in some dark corridor, conjuring nightmares. He spun about, barking orders at the stunned gold cloaks. Send men to search every corridor, every hidden passage. She can't have gone far. No doubting. They scurried off, leaving 2 behind to guard the door. Tyrion stepped out, mind racing. If she succeeded in freeing Stannis or worse, murdered Joffrey or Cersei, the city would plunge into deeper chaos. Fear churned in his gut. He hurried through the halls, Bronn trailing behind, calling for more men to join the search. They found footprints near a disused hallway, but they vanished. One guard reported glimpsing a flash of red cloth near a sconce, but when he reached it, no one was there. Another swore he heard chanting in a foreign tongue, only to find an empty storeroom room. At last, hours past midnight, Tyrion slumped into a bench in frustration. They discovered no trace of Melisandre. 6 guards had been found dead, each with blackened throats. Another 3 had gone missing entirely. Fear weighed on everyone. The Red Woman was a specter in the darkness, unstoppable. Cersei confronted Tyrion in the corridor leading to the Queen's apartments. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You let that witch into the city." Tyrion bristled. "I never let her in. She came with Stannis. If I'd known she had such vile powers." "You should have killed her on sight," she snapped. "Now she's picking us off one by one. What if she gets to Joffrey?" Tyrion tried to keep an even tone. "We have doubled the guards around Joffrey. He's as safe as we can make him. We're searching every passage. We'll find her." Cersei's face contorted with fear and rage. "You had better, or I'll have your head instead of hers." She turned on her heel, leaving Tyrion shaking with anger and dread. Even if they found Melisandre, how would they kill her if she truly commanded shadows? He could only vow to do all in his power. But the night brought no resolution. Nor did the next day. A sense of deep unease permeated the keep. The gold cloaks patrolled in groups, always watching the corners. Davos languished in near-house arrest with Stannis, both of them petrified by what might come next. Tyrion spoke with Varys, who had no answer except frightened speculation. If Melisandre had some magical means to move about unseen, she could strike anywhere, anytime. On the 3rd day after the shadow killings, a new crisis erupted. The watchers on the walls spotted a massing of activity in Stannis' camp. Siege engines were rolled forward and men began forming ranks. The banner of the Flaming Heart rose high. From the battlements, Tyrion gazed out with mounting alarm. Was this it? The final push? Or a feint? Blackwater joined him, face pale. "My lord, they're preparing for an assault. Perhaps they believe their Red Woman will undo our defenses." Tyrion's jaw tensed. "We must man the walls, the catapults, ready the oil and arrows. If they push for the gates, we rain fire on them. If their fleet tries the bay, we raise the chain." "Nah. No." He turned to a subordinate. "Send word to Joffrey that this could be the battle. Make sure he shows himself on the ramparts if needed. The men must see him leading." But as the hours passed, no direct assault came. Instead, the watchers reported movement along the roads to the north. A dust cloud, as if an army marched from that direction. Tyrion's heart soared with a flicker of hope. Could it be Tywin at last? Evening shadows stretched long when a rider arrived at the gates under a Tyrell banner. The gold cloaks opened a sally port to admit him. He was a herald, dusty and exhausted, but carrying a sealed letter. Brought before Tyrion in the courtyard, the man bowed. "I bear word from Lord Tywin Lannister and the Lady Olenna Tyrell. They have joined forces north of the city to crush Stannis' host between them and your walls. They intend to attack at dawn. The Tyrell cavalry is at the ready." Tyrion felt a surge of relief. The combined might of Tywin Lannister and the Tyrells would far outweigh Stannis' besiegers, especially with so many lords uncertain about continuing. "Have they spoken to the enemy camp?" The herald nodded. "They sent riders, offering terms. Most of the men there remain loyal to Stannis' cause, but many waver. If your city stands firm and their approach is unopposed, they'll crash upon Stannis' lines from the rear. It could be a massacre." Tyrion's stomach twisted with a peculiar mixture of relief and dread. "Thank you. Rest now. We'll prepare." As the herald was led away, Tyrion turned to Blackwater. "Summon the council." Let's see if we can end this without bathing the fields in blood. We have one final chance. Nin. Night fell, and the city braced for dawn's conflict. The walls were manned with archers, the catapults primed. In the great hall, Tyrion, Joffrey, and Cersei met with the small council and a few key knights. The plan was simple: hold the walls. If Stannis' host attacked, repel them. If Tywin's host engaged from the rear, let them. Tyrion hoped that as soon as the lords outside realized they faced overwhelming odds, they might surrender. The big question was whether the Red Woman might do something monstrous to turn the tide. Early morning light revealed Stannis' camp in full motion. Tyrion from atop the walls could see the banners shifting and the lines forming. Then, at the horizon, a second dust cloud signaled the arrival of Tywin's cavalry. The faint sound of horns drifted over the fields. The entire panorama looked poised on the verge of cataclysm. A lone rider emerged from Stannis' lines under a white flag. He approached the city, shouting that he bore a final plea. Blackwater met him halfway down the causeway, speaking briefly. Then the rider galloped away. Blackwater climbed back to the gatehouse where Tyrion waited. He says they demand we release Stannis at once and open the gates, or they'll join battle with Tywin and the Tyrells. It seems they intend to fight to free their lord, or die trying. Tyrion swallowed. Then they've chosen war. The first rays of sun broke across the landscape, gilding the siege towers, the lines of men, and the distant cavalry. The horns sounded again, louder. On the ramparts beside Tyrion, Joffrey stood in gilded armor, shifting nervously. Cersei was absent, having chosen to remain in the keep. Tyrion watched the field with a clenched jaw. War was about to erupt. Suddenly, horns on Tywin's side brayed a charging call. Even from this distance, Tyrion glimpsed the glimmer of steel as thousands of cavalry thundered forward. Drums pounded in the ranks of Highgarden. The infantry marched behind them, wave upon wave. His father had truly come, and the Tyrell strength with him. A fearsome sight. Stannis' forces scrambled to form lines, archers knocking arrows, spearmen bracing. Then the cavalry struck their flank, shockingly swift, smashing into unprepared men. From the city walls, Tyrion saw entire ranks buckle. Chaos rippled through Stannis' camp. Some men turned to fight, others panicked. The siege towers swayed, half abandoned. Catapults lay idle. Then as Tywin's cavalry hammered their flank, a new wave arrived. Sir Loras Tyrell and his knights, banners of the Golden Rose streaming, crashed into another portion of Stannis' lines. Screams and metal clashing reached even the walls. The air filled with dust, obscuring details, but the outline of carnage was evident. Now a portion of Stannis' men turned toward the city, as if to attempt an assault on the gates. Tyrion shouted for archers to fire. Arrows rained down, cutting down the disorganized surge. Confusion reigned below. The men outside realized they were trapped. The city's walls to one side, Tywin's cavalry to the other. Tyrion almost pitied them. Within the swirling battle, Tyrion glimpsed occasional pockets of fierce resistance. Some knights in Baratheon livery managed to hold off the cavalry for moments at a time. Others tried to rally around the flaming heart banners, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. House Lannister and House Tyrell pressed in relentlessly. Soon the lines buckled. Groups of men broke away, fleeing for the shore or the nearby roads, only to be run down by cavalry or shot by archers. By midday, the dust began to settle. The field was strewn with bodies. Prisoners were herded into rough pens. The banners of the Stag and Flaming Heart lay trampled in the mud. Here and there, the watchers on the walls could see stragglers limping away, pursued by outriders. The relief in King's Landing was palpable, and overshadowed by the horror of the slaughter. Tyrion felt no joy as he watched the ruin of Stannis' loyalists. All he felt was an ache in his bones. The city gates opened to admit Tywin's triumphant entry. Soldiers in crimson cloaks flooded in, some bearing the gold lion of Lannister, others the golden rose of Tyrell. Tywin himself rode at their head, clad in polished plate, face grim as ever. Tyrion and Joffrey descended to the courtyard to greet him. Cheers erupted from gold cloaks and small folk who had gathered, relieved that the immediate threat was over. Tywin dismounted, ignoring the dust and blood caking his armor. His cool gaze swept over the courtyard, pausing on Tyrion. "You have quite a knack for finding trouble, son." Tyrion bowed, swallowing a multitude of emotions. You arrived just in time. Tywin handed his reins to a squire. Yes, though it seems your city was on the brink of tearing itself apart from within before we got here. Where is Stannis? In custody, Tyrion said. He remains unbowed, but his army is shattered. That leaves the question, what do we do with him now? And with the rumors about Joffrey's parentage? Nah. Tywin's glare hardened. We shall address all that. First, we must secure this city. Where is your sister? Joffrey stepped forward, clearing his throat. My mother awaits you in the keep. I am King Joffrey, victorious thanks to your armies. The traitors are crushed. Tywin inclined his head, though Tyrion detected no genuine deference. Indeed, your grace. Let us speak inside. They proceeded into the Red Keep. On the steps, Lady Olenna Tyrell appeared, flanked by a small retinue. She eyed Tyrion with a sharp glance. Ah, the imp. I trust you're managing to keep your head above water in this den of vipers? Tyrion forced a wry smile. Barely, my lady. She sniffed. Well, we shall see if your king's claim holds firm now that the war is nearly won. Tywin and Olenna parted ways to meet with Cersei. Tyrion followed, bracing for the tumult of negotiations that would inevitably shape the future of the realm. Inside, the great hall was cleared of bloodstains, though the memory of that day's slaughter lingered. Courtiers gathered, bowing to Tywin and Olenna as they approached the dais, where Joffrey perched on the Iron Throne, face shining with relief at the newfound security. Cersei joined them, offering a stiff courtesy to Lady Olenna. We owe House Tyrell a great debt for your timely intervention. Olenna pursed her lips. We'll see it repaid in suitable alliances and lands, dear. Tywin cleared his throat. First, let us deal with Stannis. Bring him forth. Guards escorted Stannis from his tower room. He stood bound at the wrists this time, face drawn, eyes burning with hatred. The entire hall hushed. He glared at Tywin, then at Joffrey on the throne. Tywin addressed him coldly. Lord Stannis, your forces are routed. You have lost. Surrender your claim and bend the knee, and perhaps the king will grant you mercy. Stannis let out a barking laugh. Bend the knee to a bastard? Never. A ripple of murmurs. Joffrey stiffened, glaring. I'll have his head for that. Tyrion quickly intervened, stepping forward. We all know your feelings, Lord Stannis. But your men are done. If you cling to your cause, you doom yourself to the block, or to some darker end. Think carefully. Nay. Stannis spat on the floor. I would rather die than yield to incestuous tyranny. Joffrey's face twisted. Then you shall die. He turned to Tywin. My lord grandfather, have him executed. His rebellion ends here. Tywin eyed Stannis with cool disdain. As you command, your grace, but be aware that many of Stannis' men remain prisoners. Executing him may rally them to renewed defiance, or cause other lords to question your mercy. Joffrey bristled. He spat at me. He called me a bastard. He tried to kill me. He must die to set an example. Nay. Tyrion felt the tension building, like a rope drawn too tight. If Stannis was executed, the rumor of Joffrey's illegitimacy would only gain traction among malcontents. Another cycle of rebellion might begin. But Joffrey's rage was unstoppable. Tyrion turned to Tywin, hoping for a cooler perspective. Tywin's face betrayed no emotion. He nodded once. It is the king's justice to mete out. If the king decrees it, so be it. Lady Olenna sniffed loudly. How very final. Is that wise? A captive lord is a bargaining chip. A dead one is good for nothing but worms. Neneths. Joffrey glared at her. He is a traitor. I will not let him live another day. Tywin turned to the hall. Very well. Let all men see what becomes of those who challenge King Joffrey. Bring forth the headsman. Chaos stirred in Tyrion's gut. This was it. A final severing of any hope for peace. Yet to protest was to risk Joffrey's wrath and appear weak. He felt Bronn's steady presence behind him but knew it would do no good. Stannis' lips curled in a contemptuous sneer. Go on, Stannis said, lifting his chin. Do your worst, bastard king. Joffrey's knuckles whitened on the throne's arms. The hall parted as gold cloaks dragged in the executioner, a tall man with a grim hood and a massive sword. Stannis was forced to his knees before the dais. The hush in the hall felt suffocating. Tyrion stared at the scene, mind spinning. He glimpsed Cersei's triumphant smirk. He noticed Lady Olenna's lips pressed tight. Tywin stood impassive, hands clasped behind his back. Stannis gazed upon them with unflinching defiance. Outside somewhere, the Red Woman might still prowl. Tyrion half expected her to burst in with a swirl of shadow to stop this. But no movement came. The hush continued, broken only by the faint scuff of boots on stone. The headsman raised his sword. Joffrey pronounced the sentence, voice ringing out, Stannis Baratheon, for treason against the crown, for murder and attempted regicide, for refusing the king's grace, I sentence you to die. Stannis closed his eyes. The sword whistled through the air. A sickening thud. Blood spattered the polished floor. Silence crystallized. Joffrey leaned forward, eyes wide with a strange savage glee. Stannis' head rolled, stopping at the foot of the dais, mouth slack, eyes glazed. For a long beat, no one spoke. Tyrion felt hollow. A sense of finality weighed on the hall. This was no triumphant end, only the beginning of something darker. The watchers parted in uneasy tension. Cersei exhaled, smiling, as if convinced this display secured her family's hold on the throne. Tywin turned away, expression unreadable. Lady Olenna shook her head slowly, as though thinking what a waste it all was. Then Joffrey rose, gesturing at the bloodied corpse. Let all see the fate of those who challenge me. I am Joffrey Baratheon, the rightful king. Now and why? Tyrion's gaze swept the hall. The watchers were silent, though fear danced in many eyes. War had not ended. One rebel was dead, but new seeds of discontent had been sown. The rumor of Joffrey's parentage would persist. The lines of conflict had shifted, but the realm's wounds ran deep. He closed his eyes, recalling how he had once hoped to avoid the Battle of the Blackwater with negotiations. He had tried to reason with Stannis, to find a path that spared the city. Instead, the city had seen bloodshed within its own walls. The final confrontation had come anyway, in a field of carnage, culminating in a single stroke of a headsman's sword. Perhaps he had only delayed the inevitable, buying a few more days for innocent folk to escape or hide. Yet he could not shake the image of the blood pooling at the dais, nor the bitterness that gnawed at him. War's cruelty was not undone by any cunning plan. In the end, force prevailed. Stannis was dead, and with him, any immediate threat of siege. But the cost was immeasurable. Corpses littered the roads, the throne room, the yard. Grief and suspicion festered. And now, with the Tyrells and Lannisters allied, a new power block took shape, while the seeds of future conflict smoldered in the shadows. Tyrion drew a long breath, feeling older than his years. He gazed at Stannis' lifeless face on the floor. A wave of regret washed over him. What if? What if? What if? What if? The question battered him like a relentless tide. He had done all he could to save the city from a monstrous battle. Yet war had come all the same, in one form or another. He bowed his head, stepping back as servants rushed to remove the body. No more words would unspill that blood. The realm was quiet now, a hush of shock and fear, but the violence beneath the surface had not vanished. The Game of Thrones would continue, its demands insatiable, feeding on the hopes and bodies of those who played. Joffrey perched on the Iron Throne, regal in posture but with something feverish in his eyes. Cersei stood beside him, exultant in her sense of victory. Tywin took his place on the dais, brimming with silent authority. Lady Olenna lingered in the shadows, calculating, always calculating. And Tyrion Lannister, the imp, the would-be peacemaker, stood amidst it all, feeling the weight of ashes in his mouth. He thought again of the moment in the throne room, when he had tried to negotiate peace before the city drowned in fire and blood. In the end, the war machine had devoured every chance for a gentler outcome. History would record that King's Landing had been saved from Stannis Baratheon's assault, that House Tyrell and House Lannister sealed their alliance in the aftermath. But Tyrion, looking on, knew the deeper truth. The city was not saved. It was only spared, for now, from the next conflagration. For a moment, the hush reigned. Then Joffrey spoke, ordering a feast to celebrate their victory, to honor the lords Tyrell and Lannister for their triumph. Cheers rose, half-hearted from some corners, fervent from others. Trumpets blared. Tapestries flapped in the sudden swirl of movement. Lords bustled about, as though a party might wash away the blood still drying on the floor. Tyrion lingered, letting the tide of courtiers pass him by. He gazed once more at the vacant spot where Stannis had kneeled, where the man's blood had smeared across the stone. The realm had turned another page, but the same story wore on. Crowns and claims, steel and shadow, the old illusions of glory. One day, Tyrion thought, perhaps someone might break the wheel or shatter the illusions that propped up these endless wars. But that day was not today. He turned to go, footsteps echoing in the chamber that reeked of death. War had claimed its due. Peace had been strangled in its cradle. And the seven kingdoms spun onward, a tapestry of cunning, cruelty, and the faintest glimmer of hope, forever overshadowed by the relentless march of ambition, and the knowledge that, in the Game of Thrones, victory was fleeting, and no throne was ever truly secure.